4:30. So now we have more than a quorum and we can get started calling the Urban Design Commission to order. Before we attack the agenda, Stefan is going to just speak about some of the procedures that have to do with the virtual meeting.
All right, welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Commission members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. The chair, clerk, and tech facilitator are responsible for muting and unmuting committee members. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. During any roll call, all panelists will be unmuted briefly. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair Goodhart, the floor is back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. We will start with the approval of the minutes. Looking for a motion, Tom.
Okay, I will so move approval.
I thought I heard you say move, and then Jessica, that's a second. Okay. If I don't see any other hands raised, then by unanimous consent, the minutes are approved. Item number 1, public comment. We received the public comment for today's agenda, and there is no one registered for general public comment. Disclosures and recusals. Anyone? I would like just to disclose that on item number 5, the owner is a client of mine, but not for this project and not on this property. That takes us to the Secretary's report and agenda overview.
Thank you, Cliff. I'm going to share the screen with the agenda. So this evening's Urban Design Commission agenda has 13 items. And as shown here, public comment is actually listed as a Legistar item to allow people to register to speak for that. But as the chair mentioned, there were none registered. Item number 2 is going to include a quick staff report on a project for 2020 and 2021, which includes updates to MGO Chapter 3324 for the Urban Design Commission, and also any policy and procedure manual updates. Item under public hearing items, number 3 is 201 Junction Road. It's a signage variance for Target. They're requesting final approval. There's a zoning staff report in the Legistar file, and this item staff is recommending for consent. Item number 4 is 1007 and 1027 Fish Hatchery Road. It's comprehensive design review in Urban Design District number 7. Final approval is requested. There is a zoning staff report attached to this Legistar file, and Matt Tucker, the zoning administrator, is present to speak on this. Item number 5 is 216 Price Place. This is a signage exception for BMO Bank. They're also requesting final approval. There's a UDC staff report in the packet because this is an Urban Design Commission signage exception. And I can answer any questions on this, and it's for the commission to decide if it meets the standards for an exception. Item number 6 is 1835 Wright Street. It's a major amendment to comprehensive design review. Final approval is requested. There's a zoning staff report in the Legistar file, and this one is also recommended for consent. Item number 7 under unfinished business is 6003, 6019, and 6035, 6015 Gemini Drive. This is a plan development. Final approval is requested. The Urban Design Commission did grant initial approval on July 29th. The Plan Commission granted conditional approval on August 4th. Common Council approved this last evening at their September 1st meeting. Just a staff report in the packet calling out some of the conditions from Plan Commission as well as the urban design conditions from the initial approval. Under new business, we have 2 items. Item number 8 is 10009 Sweet Willow Pass. This is a residential building complex. The Commission is seeing this for the first time and they're requesting initial and final approval. There's a staff report in your packet, and I believe that they're looking to go to the Plan Commission on October 5th. Item number 9 is 1701 Wright Street. This is a public building and it's actually an alteration to a public building. They're requesting initial and final approval. There's a staff report attached to the Legistar file, and staff is supportive of this and recommending consent. We have 4 informational items this evening, and there are staff reports for each of these attached to the Legistar items. Item number 10 is 7050 Watts Road. It's a planned development. Item number 11 is 1224 South Park Street. This is a new mixed-use building in Urban Design District number 7. Item number 12 is 7601 Mineral Point Road. This is a planned development, 4-story apartment building. Item number 13 is 9703 Paragon Street, residential building complex. That's the agenda for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would like to just remind the presenters on each agenda item that each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Okay, so that brings us, Janine, to agenda item number 2. Oh, wait, before we move to agenda item number 2, I would like to see if there is a motion for consent approval on the items that Janine mentioned or any other items. Tom? Oh, let me unmute you. Hold on. There you go.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to move the 3 items suggested, items 3, 6, and 9 for consent. And I would ask for additional consideration of item 5. Just on my visual review, given that they're not going to do the wall signs, I actually think the BMO sign on the blue blade is more appropriate architecturally. So I like that. I like the proposed solution. So if I may add item 5, the BMO site, to the suggested consent items.
Okay, so the motion is for 3, 5, 6, and 9. Lois, are you seconding? I see your hand raised. Are you seconding for all 4 of those? Okay. All right. So unless I see any hands raised, then by unanimous consent, those 4 items are approved. Okay. Thank you. And now we can move on to item number 2.
Okay, I'll try to do this in 3 minutes.
That's right. Where's my clock? Okay, go.
So, essentially, what we're doing is we're introducing some topics for consideration. We've been kind of talking about this during some of our workshops and planning for 2020 to maybe clean up some text in Madison General Ordinances, Chapter 33.24. And this is by no means a final list. This is just an introduction of the topic for consideration by the commissioners. And I can add items to these and then come back with more detailed report, and either at a light meeting or at a future workshop meeting, we can do some deeper dives into some of these changes. And some of these might include cleaning up the administrative powers for the secretary, clarifying the initial final process in the code. We currently have it in the policy and procedure manual, but don't have it detailed in the code. And it's also reconsideration of some review fees. And then fourthly, looking at the urban design district guidelines and requirements and kind of reevaluating some of those. And I have a list of some things to be considered. So if we look at the urban design districts, they were originally created as gateways into the city and major corridors. And of course, urban design district number 1 was the first created, and that's actually split between 2 parts that would have been considered the southeast gateway into the city. And then, of course, consecutively, the districts followed. So the first one in 1975, the second one also in 1975, and then the third followed about 12 years later, which, those 2 kind of captured the southwest gateway into the city. And then districts 4, 5, and 6 followed shortly after, looking at, kind of in the 1990s, kind of covering the northeast and the northwest gateways into the city. District 7 was added as we looked at Park Street as a major corridor entering into the city, into the downtown area. Then, of course, we have District number 8, which is the most recent, which covers, which followed the Capital Gateway Plan in 2009. And that one has seen a lot of evolution in recent years. So some of the considerations, maybe updating some of the species, the plant species and tree species listed in 1, 2, and 3 that might be outdated, but also looking at the possibility of the Mifflin Area Plan. Does that want to be a district or just a special district of control? And then another thought was possibly part of district number 4 that might become part of district 8 because it's split with district 8 in the center. So some things to consider. Where should we prioritize growth? And that would align with some of the area plans that a lot of the city planning group has been working on. And as I mentioned, there was the Mifflin Area Plan that the Commission and Plan Commission approved. Focused on a lot of important topics. And then these were some of the key takeaways from that Mifflin Area Plan, looking at public to private transition, lot rhythm, setbacks and stepbacks, massing and articulation, materials, and of course, sustainability. So those were a couple of key things. I can go back to the list at the beginning and answer any questions. Are there any questions or additions from the Commission?
Tom.
Yeah, am I unmuted? Okay.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Okay, yeah. Actually, one specific broad addition that I would like to see under item 4 is as the city considers revising, and it's not specific here that we will, but at some point, I assume some of the older urban design districts will be revised, that we move the UDD guidelines to a graphic illustrated format, if possible. Specifically because I think they are hard, not for us to interpret necessarily, but I think for lay people and people who are looking, sort of watching our activities to make our recommendations more explicit. I would also note that districts 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all along proposed BRT routes, and how BRT is integrated and how a complete street is developed along University, Sherman, Park Street, etc. I think it needs a visual representation for people to understand, particularly if there's going to be lane width additions, etc. So I think it would help strengthen as you get to any kind of revision of the design guidelines to move towards a graphic illustrated version of them, or at least supplementing them with graphics.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I had one question. Is there a general timeline or deadline that you'd like to see, or has been suggested that the commission address these? I notice I'm looking at it says Urban Design Commission 2020, and it's September 2nd.
Exactly. Well, we might have had a slight delay due to unforeseen circumstances. So we had hoped to accomplish a lot of this in 2020, but more realistically, we see this kind of starting now and then kind of picking up the pace in early 2021 and quite possibly moving some of these things into action, actually presenting them to Common Council, say mid-2021.
Okay.
If not sooner.
All right. Great. Thank you very much. Shane, you had a question.
There we go. I'll just unmute myself. But I noticed that sustainability was in the agenda right up, but not necessarily on the presentation screen right there. And I just think that's something that comes up often. I would very much support that being a part of this evolution and guidance for both us as the commission, but also the community and how to incorporate more sustainability and sustainability review into urban design as a topic.
Okay, thank you, Shane.
Anyone else before we move on to the next item? Okay, great. Thanks, Janine. That takes us to agenda item number 4, which is 1007 and 1027 Fish Hatchery Road. And I believe, Matt Tucker, would you like to open up with a few remarks?
Yes, if I could, thank you. Just once again to kind of set the ground rules here. Typically, with signage, comprehensive design review or similar signage requests, the staff likes to go first just to kind of explain the issue that we kind of outlined in the staff report, and then provide the applicant the opportunity, of course, to respond and present their argument. And our focus will be on the matters that were part of the comprehensive design review that staff was struggling with relative to the standards, or has needs for more information or consideration from the Urban Design Commission. So that's where I'm going to go with this. I think what I'll do first is I'm going to walk through the basic comments that we outlined in the staff report. And then what I'll do is show the graphics, just because I'm working with one monitor and I think that's going to be the easiest way to do it. To start with, one overarching principle with this application for comprehensive design review that the staff was struggling with, and I think the commission might notice, is this application really lacks a lot of the detail and information that typically is included with a comprehensive design review request. It allows us to be able to review it relative to the criteria for approval for comprehensive design review. Staff worked significantly. We had several meetings with the applicants. Basically, what you see is the best that we could get. And we are at a position where when this is the scenario, we just simply going to need to bring it to you, have you make your findings, your recommendations. Hopefully we can fill the record with some more information, possibly during the hearing. But that is why the application is not, I would say, isn't necessarily meeting what the standards that the UDC has requested for being able to review these things based on the criteria. And I'll be curious to hear what y'all have to say about that. There are a number of exceptions to the sign code that are being requested with this application. Starting first and in chronological order in their application, and as we discussed in the staff report, there's a request to allow for some large address numbers that are higher up on the facade that faces towards Fish Hatchery. These signs are additional signs above or beyond the canopy sign, which has already been permitted, and I believe it's installed already. This is the case where the sign code allows you to have a wall sign, or in lieu of a wall sign, you can have a canopy sign. And they chose to go ahead at their own risk and secure permits for the canopy sign option, and have come back after the fact now asking for a comprehensive design review to add in the address signs as additional wall signs. The commission does not have to accept that the canopy signs are there and are have to be made part of the CDR. They have the ability to approve the CDR, including or excluding any signs. First about addressing. just so the commission is aware, we do see addressing requests periodically where addresses are overly large and they're not necessarily meeting with what the city's ordinances or the fire department requirements are for addressing. They're excessively large, or their design is such that they're really intending to be the building signage for the building, which is fine. It's an option that a person can choose to do if they want to. However, they, as I mentioned before, you can't have the addressing signs and in turn have canopy signs in that same facade. This is a pretty long building. There are sort of pods, multiple pods, if you will, to this building. What I can assure the commission of is that it will be effectively addressed like any other multi-building site. There's not an issue or a concern with this site not having the addressing that the fire department is going to require for it to be found by emergency vehicles, and trip generation to it, as predominantly it's a residential building, probably isn't going to be a problem. People are going to know where this building is. Our main issue with the signs, we note the size and height of the signs. They're at the 4th and 5th story on one part of the building and at the 3rd story of another. The application indicates that the size and font, I think, is going to be similar, but apparently it's just the color. There's a little bit of a difference there, we noticed. But once this kind of lacks the contextual detail that we need to kind of make a decision, it's not including renderings of showing how this is going to relate to the surrounding area. Typically, you'd be presented with sort of long view photos or photos as you might see the signs from different perspectives. That detail hasn't been presented, and so we feel like it struggles to be tested against the criteria for CDR approval. This also, we know it faces an apartment building to the other side, and we're sort of questioning the necessity standard that relates to criteria number 2 in CDR approval. Are these signs really necessary? And another point on these signs is the adjacent medical office building on Park Street they did choose to put addressing as their sole sign. They have no wall signs. They have a ground sign on Park Street, and they have 2 north and south facing address signs. If you've seen them, they're very ineffective. They're just not viewable. But it is a commercial building, not a residential occupancy. Those signs were approved under the old mechanism of an applicant could come to the Urban Design Commission and just get a blanket approval for signage as part of the plan developments, where since about 2015, we've been using conventional signage districts and CDR for exceptions. So that's how those signs got put on. Moving on to the address number facing south, there's also a lack of detail showing the viewability of this sign. The language talks about, and the application talks about, the sign being viewable from traffic on Fish Hatchery heading north, but there's no graphic that represents that. There's just one picture showing kind of like a focus in on where the sign is. It may be fine, but the detail isn't there. This sign does face the parking ramp to the south and a shared driveway. It is the only sign on this portion of the facade, but it doesn't face an eligible parking area, so it needs an exception. We'll show that. Moving on to the Park Street side, there are 2 commercial sections to this building. There's some live work units that are to the south, and then there's a standalone commercial tenant on the first floor to the north. The live work request is to allow for both projecting and canopy. The exception that's being requested is to allow for the projecting signs underneath the sconces, which are at a height above grade that is less than 10 feet. The code requires a 10-foot height clearance from a pedestrian way. The areas that are underneath, that these signs are underneath, appear to be recesses in the building next to stairwells, not pedestrian ways, so it's probably fine from a perspective of that they're not going to interfere with the pedestrian way. These do lack some detail. And we do have a question about why they wouldn't be required to be illuminated if they're directly underneath an illumination feature, being the illumination sconces. So you end up with a double illumination situation. The commission has seen this before a couple of times where people are doing illuminated signs and then externally illuminating them. And that's something we'd like you to review, and if you find it acceptable to make that finding. Moving on to the tenant space further north, the single tenant space. There is very little detail provided about this part of the application. The graphic that's submitted doesn't appear to be correct. It appears to show awnings, and it just lacks the detail for us to be able to understand what we'd be issuing permits for, to be honest. It lacks an understanding of the space underneath it too, to be sure that it doesn't have the interference with pedestrian ways, but it could possibly be just fine. The final sign is the ground sign. It also it appears basically okay. There is a question about the sign being located within the intersection vision triangle. There's a restriction on signs, any structures and features between the height of 30 inches and 10 feet being located in the intersection of two streets. I'm not going to get too much into the math on it, but we have put this to the applicant to gain information or an approval or whatever from traffic engineering, and still haven't heard anything on this. So it's pending. If they're okay with it, it's probably fine. If they're not okay with it, the sign would have to shift to the south a few feet to just get out of the intersection vision triangle. More of a mechanical thing at this point in time than something that necessarily would be something we would voice any kind of objection to. So with that, I just want to quickly run through the presentation if I can. I'm going to screen share if I can, which I can. Let's see how I do this. Okay, there we go. Okay. If someone could nod and just say that they're seeing this, that'd be great.
Yep.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so first picture is the site location. It's a planned multi-use site that includes the clinic and the parking structure to the south. This is the proposed addressing sign. The measurement for signable area goes from the top of the bottom of the first story up to this fifth story, and the code allows you to measure and place signs like this. It's a bit unusual, and it's pretty unusual to see residential buildings with signs this high. That's the address, and over here is the existing canopy sign that's already permitted. Next slide is further down, and to the side we'll see the other addressing sign towards the south end of the building. In another signable area, this signable area goes to the ground. We can't really see the detail on this because this is a very difficult elevation for us to see the specific details on that. Moving on to this is the address sign facing south. This is the one that would be viewable from traffic coming up South Park Street. And once again, we just have a real close in on it and not its context and viewed from a distance. The next slide, this is the detail that was included that shows the information relative to the elevation on Park Street. We don't have a lot of detail outside of some photographs, and this is where we're lacking the detail to understand placement, exactly how these are going to work. We do have information about the size of the canopy signs. We do clearly see where they go. That's probably not a question. Those seem pretty straightforward, and the staff report talked about that. And this is the sign further up at the commercial tenant space. We're not really sure what's going on here underneath it, but it appears to be a cutout for something. Panning back up, this is the location, and it's just there's not a zoom in or a focus in on what we're seeing as part of the building. Also, the light sconces, this is about all we know about where the light sconces are relative to the sign placement for the projecting signs at the live work, which are generally right here. Once again, sort of lacking the detail necessary. Here's a little further. This slide's a little better. That does show that the recesses between the two buildings and where the signs would be located. And then there will be a question about, I know there's a question about sign clutter also. If you have canopy signs and you have projecting signs kind of low like this, if that's, and the sconces, how that clutters up the facade. And this is a view of the ground sign that I mentioned earlier. The little red triangle here is the location, and once again, we can't tell where exactly it is. Is it in the right of way? Is it in the intersection site distance triangle? Does it need an exception? And that question has yet to be asked and answered. So with that, those are all of the matters that we discussed in the staff report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. However, of course, we want to let the applicant have an opportunity to respond to whatever I had said and maybe fill in the gaps a little bit.
Great. Thank you very much.
We have some folks registered on this one. Jake Buns is registered to speak, and then Brad Hubbard is available for questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Jake Buns here. Can you hear me?
Yep, Jake, we'll just ask you if you could keep your presentation to 3 minutes, particularly just try to address the items that Matt spoke to us about. And if you can provide additional information and context, that would be great.
Yeah, so as Matt touched on the wall signs, the purpose of the wall signs for us, there's 3 of them, obviously, was this building was built in phases, although they all opened shortly after one another. It's 3 separate buildings. So I think it was the wall signs, the thought behind them was more of a wayfinding for guests, delivery people. There's just because of the fact that there are multiple entrances into the building. Particularly the wall sign 1027 on the South Street facade. That would be our main entrance for the building D, we call it, which is the furthest south building, and that has a separate main entrance from the other buildings. As it pertains to the canopy signs, they'll sit obviously above the canopy for those 5 live work units. They're 5.5 feet off the facade. I know they had to be outside of 3 feet off the facade. They'll be you can see all 5 of them right there. And then below that, we have projecting the blade signage for all the 5 live work units. They'll be about 7 foot 6 inches high, and they're located, as Matt said, out of they're in the recessed area because the steps project out. So they're out of the way of pedestrians walking by or maybe hitting them. There are 2 non-lit options. Matt had mentioned being double lit. We just wanted to give our tenants the opportunity to pick which options they want. And we don't have any tenants in there currently, but we're working on signing some. So, I mean, I think most people, if the sconce is shining down on it, would probably choose the option B or option C, excuse me. And the idea for the projecting signs was just easier for cars on Park Street maybe to see, as opposed to the canopy signs running parallel on Park Street. And then finally, the ground sign is 4 feet tall. We did get approval from City of Madison Traffic Engineering today for the vision triangle that the ground sign sits within, and that is a 4 foot tall triangular ground sign, just used to distinguish what commercial tenants we have on the property, and our property name, obviously Peloton right there.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, are there any questions or comments from our commission members for either Matt or the applicant? Tom. Gonna get you unmuted. Here we go.
Thank you. A couple quick things, mostly related to the ground sign. I guess you just said it was approved. My question is, how thick is that ground sign? I see the dimensions, 4 feet high, et cetera, but that vision triangle is very critical, particularly to people coming at the very short stoplight at Parr Street that enters into that 5-way intersection. And so to see the traffic coming down Fish Hatchery. So the thickness dimension of that sign is a concern to me and to the neighborhood. Just curious, how big a sign is that?
It's triangular sign, so it's about 5 feet wide, I guess, from at its widest point there. So it's on our property, and it's on the corner of our property, and the corner of our property is about, I think I measured it was like 30 or 35 feet away from the actual street. So there is some room there. And again, it's only 4 feet tall. So if that helps with the vision triangle, and it was, like I said, it was approved.
Well, I have a feeling that there will be neighborhood reaction to that, quite frankly, in not a positive way. My other concern is related to the live work signage. I just personally find one or the other should either the canopy signage or the projecting sign, but I think both will feel very visually cluttered. Right now, I think the red Peloton signage on the canopies looks good. ties with the red awnings you've got on there. I would prefer to see the canopy signage for the live work units and omit the blade signs if you could.
Okay, that's noted.
Okay, is that it, Tom?
Yeah.
Thanks, Don.
Okay. Thank you. Shane.
I just agree with Tom with the projecting signs under the canopies. I'm certain that we wouldn't want to see those lit, but I also am pretty confident that they're unnecessary, kind of redundant, and I'd prefer to see the canopy sign themselves. Also, I just think maybe your tenants might want to use those spaces as cafe spaces, even though they're not per se circulation spaces. They could still be people spaces with cafe seating and that kind of thing. And 7'6" is probably above most people, but I think that's why some of those code height requirements are in there. So again, just to reiterate, I would prefer to see the canopy signs and not those projecting signs under the canopies.
Okay, thank you. Christian, and then Russell.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
My comment, excuse me. My comment, I'm sorry, I got a frog in my throat. Why don't you go to somebody else for a second?
All right, we'll go to Russell while you pull yourself together. Go ahead, Russell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not entirely clear how much the precedent matters, but on Exhibit H, it's a question for the applicant. Exhibit H provides some precedent, I believe, across the street. Question for the applicant is that precedent, are those signs lit the way that the red signs, number signs, address signs are lit in this project?
They are not lit. I don't believe. I'm trying to find Exhibit H right now. No, they're not lit. Could you hear that?
Yes.
This is Matt Tucker. I just want to add a comment. I believe they may be halo lit or backlit, which is basically backlit light pushing out. This is the medical office building to the south, correct?
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Sorry, you got muted.
No,
there.
I muted myself. It's a habit I'm getting into here in the virtual meeting world. Thank you for that. I just wonder. I wonder whether we really have a good understanding of what the precedent is for those number signs being lit, and understanding, the how that's going to come across, considering the neighbors. So I just put that question out there.
Okay. Thanks. I'll go ahead and unmute you again, Christian.
Yeah, my comment on those number signs is, man, they're so big. I mean, this is a very attractive building, and I think people are going to know it as the Peloton building. When I've seen buildings that were prominently addressed with numbers like that, it's usually buildings that, were known as 66 Main Street or whatever, rather than a named building. I'm not averse to doing it, I guess, but they're so big. I mean, and the fact that they're red, I mean, not only is it the size of them, it's the, the placement of them. It seems like, they should be smaller. They should match both of them. They should be lower. I'm not sure the placement, where you think these would be seen from. The 1007, I mean, the only head-on view you'd have of it is if you were coming down Brooks. if you were driving up Fish Hatchery, I guess depending on how it would project from the building, the only way you're going to see it is if you're somehow trying to look up as you're driving there. I'm not sure who it's for. The placement that high and that size just seems all wrong. The one on the south end of the building, I don't have a problem with. And I concur with the other commissioners on the signs on Park Street. Having both projecting signs and canopy signs just seems redundant for, particularly given the smallish size of these businesses. So, but I guess my main concerns are with the numbers and the items I mentioned.
Okay, and that might even go back to the, to the comment that Matt had earlier about lacking context and detail. We're seeing these on these partial elevations, but not really understanding the experience coming up and down the up and down Fish Hatchery Road. Lois.
Am I unmuted now?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I agree with Tom with the live work signage. The canopy sign is definitely preferable than the wall blades. And if they do the wall blades, then unlit. I want to ask a question. I assume, Matt, that when we're looking at this elevation of 1007, that the address sign, there's a large, the outline of that space was just to show the signable area. Is that correct? Or is it outlined like that? I don't think it's outlined. I think it's just a raceway.
That is correct. It's a outlining of a designation of a signable area. That was the purpose of it.
Okay.
I don't believe the raceway is black behind the numbers. I don't believe the teal color, that pink color is doing anything besides trying to provide contrast to show the area graphically for the application.
Okay. And I believe those are lit, but I don't see how. Well, first of all, I don't think it enhances the appearance of the building at all. I think it does detract from the appearance of the building. I think the positioning of it is very awkward, kind of dipping up over that brick line. And I don't know what that looks like in the daytime too. Right now, it has an illuminated look in these renderings, and I'm not sure what that would look like. It would just look like something kind of suspended over the building, and it would again detract from the overall appearance. I also don't think they're effective. For the most part, people aren't looking way up that high when they're looking for an address. So if you are looking for an address, you first see the building and then you go and see which door you go into. And at that point, you are under the building and you would have to go across the street to see these signs, I think, effectively. My last question is the 1027 illustration. Are those signs on the canopy or are they on the building? It appears right from this drawing.
That's on the building.
Okay, and why wouldn't they be on the canopy?
We had it on the building all along. I guess I think that you know what? I'm not really sure. I wasn't a part of designing the signs in the beginning, but we just kept them on the building all along. So
my reaction to that would be it's inconsistent with what you're doing on the other side of the building and in some other areas, but also when you are under that canopy, you're not going to see those letters or those numbers. You'd have to, again, back up. If you were walking along the side of the building, I don't know how visible they would be to a pedestrian. So I would vote for those to be on the canopy themselves.
Okay.
But is the question on that particular sign, Matt, whether it's a permittable sign facing south?
Yes, it does need an exception to be there because it is an ineligible facade. And then the question is just context and, because all we have is this. I was even looking at this in Street View, and you can see the building under construction. You can tell that there's streets around that, but there's just nothing contextually to put this into place. And it might be fine in the canopy. It might be appropriate contextually to be on the back on the wall just because of how the longer view looks. It's just we lack that detail.
Okay.
And one last comment is I do acknowledge that there is also, we are seeing signage on the windows and the glass of the doors and next to the doors. So it is already getting kind of oversigned. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else would like to ask a question or make a comment? Let's see. I think there was 1, 2, 3, 4. So I counted them 5 exceptions that were being asked for, and I know we've commented on almost all of them, I believe. Wondering if anyone would like to stick their neck out and address those and make a finding and a motion to move the project along one way or the other.
Cliff, could I offer one suggestion, just kind of like to talk through what your options are?
You bet.
Okay. So the options that are in front of the commission are to sort of like approve as submitted, refer. You could refer any aspect of this if you feel like you want more detail. And you could also opine, and you could like make a finding or a decision of denial, say on some aspect of it. So if and you don't need to make a decision if you don't feel like you have the information. It's better that you make the best decision based on the information you need relative to the criteria by which this is being reviewed. If you don't feel like you have it, you can just refer it for that and give clear direction to provide information in that regard. And that's in some cases that's what we're kind of recommending in the staff report, but we'd like you to if that's what you decided to make that specific finding.
Yep, thank you. And in addition to that, I would ask, for specifics on those areas that are acceptable, not acceptable, completely unknown because of the context, and so that we can get this application back on the right track. Tom.
Yeah, I don't know that this is, I was actually just going to make a motion to refer so that all of the comments on all the various sign elements that we've reflected on tonight could be sort of, that they come back to us with a revised proposal that addresses all of our comments and adds the detail, particularly the perspectives, like drive views of the building with signage down Park Street, down Fish Hatchery, so that we can see their proposal in more detail and also reflecting all the comments we made. So my motion was for referral.
Okay, Lois, is that a second?
I'll second it, but I would also like to see the daytime and the evening illustrations of it. So yes, that's a second with that added.
Yep. Any further discussion on the motion? Again, to help identify shortcomings, more information specifically that's being requested. I think we've given the applicant an opinion on some of the sign clutter on the canopy versus the wall-mounted blade sign. Any further information for the applicant before we vote? Okay. Alder Abbas.
I do not have any instruction or comments. I just want to say I came late, so I didn't get a chance to see full presentation, so I will not vote on this agenda item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom.
Just one quick addition. If they could include a visual from Parr Street, over that the vision triangle with their triangular sign in place, just to see what that does to that. It may be a moot point, but I would like to see that.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to attempt to unmute the alder. I believe I did.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
You bet.
Speaking on behalf of residents in District 13, I think less is more in the mind of many of the residents in the Bay Creek area, the Greenbush area, people who, in the neighborhood. So aesthetically, ideally, if this could be unilluminated, not illuminated, and if it could simply not be obtrusive. The one comment, the design of this building itself has a landmark quality. If someone is being directed to the location of this building, it will be easily identified. I don't think it's necessary to use the existing face of the building to advertise its presence. The design itself accomplishes that. So modesty in this instance is called for, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion. It was seconded with additional discussion. So I'll look for anyone raising their hand in opposition to referral. Seeing none, by unanimous consent, this application, is referred to a future meeting. Thank you. Okay, so that we've approved number 5 and 6. That will bring us to item number 7, which is 6003 through 6015 Gemini Drive.
We have a couple of people registered to speak on this item. That includes Brian Munson, Daniel Zutter, as well as Adam Fredenthal. And then registered as available to answer a question includes Dan Brinkman and Joseph Lee.
Great.
Great. Thanks, Janine. I'm Adam Frendel. I'm with JLE Architects. So in response to the primary landscape comment from the initial UDC approval meeting, we have added raised masonry planters to help visually shield the parking lot from the covered breezeway commercial seating area. Right there, thank you. Next slide. We have simplified the materials, eliminating the brick as well as the red siding. We now have 3 primary materials: Fond du Lac stone and composite siding and panels of 2 colors, an aged pewter or a gray, and a wood tone cedar. Next slide. Here's a close-up of the resident patio area reflecting the simplified material palette, not the siding color change from red to gray. Next slide. Next slide. These 2 are kind of duplicates. There you go. Again, simplification of material palette. Here's a shot of the breezeway between North Star and the parking lot. The brick material was eliminated and the wood tone panels create a more unified form. We also changed the masonry of the planters to match the stone of the building. Next slide. This image shows the omission of the brick and red siding. Composite panels of gray and wood tone are used to achieve a more cohesive composition. Next slide. View from the east, looking to the west. Next slide is a little better view. So here you can see the existing retail building at the southeast corner of the block. This perspective provides a good overall angle to recognize the simple composition of stone end caps and a central facade with wood tone and gray composite complementary materials infilling between. Also note on this image, the vertical element that was part of a larger sort of C-frame gesture has now become part of a plane that's right at the knuckle of the building on the north side there, right there. So previously you can see the edge of the red or the wood tone frame on the original has now become more of a plane of material. Next slide. So here's the south facade facing Cottage Grove Road. Red siding changed to gray. You can also see the brick was changed to wood tone along the North Star elevation above the breezeway. And next slide. Lastly, we have a view from the northwest looking to the southeast. This is a good view to illustrate the design intent of providing visually solid corners at the ends with the Fond du Lac stone, and that's tied together with a stone base around the entire perimeter. Materials always transition at inside corners. We feel that's very good design practice. It helps reinforce massing forms as opposed to planes. Looks more natural. This strategic use of different materials and color helps to visually break down the facade. It's a bit hard to see in this image, but the gray siding vertical break at the kink of the building sets off the adjacent forms at the kink in the Sharpsburg side. So that's right in the middle there, yeah. So you can see that on the 2D elevations, which are the last slide of this deck. If you want to jump to that after this, all the way to the end. We've evaluated a lot of different options. Is this the last one or the first one, I guess, in the slide deck, Janine? All the way to the front. There you go. So you can see on the elevation on the bottom there, the wood tone comes to a knuckle right where those break lines are, and the gray siding, which is on the back face of the balconies, comes down to break those forms without any of the wood tone tying through. At any rate, we've looked at lots of different options. We feel that we've really resolved the issues expressed to us at initial UDC and come up with a more cohesive, simplified design that we hope we can move forward with. I guess from there, I'll turn it over to Brian Munson.
Thank you.
Great, and thanks, Adam. I'll be very brief. As Janine discussed earlier, since the initial approval, we've been to Plan Commission and on to the council, and so we're back tonight really excited with the proposal in front of you. We have looked at a lot of different options, as Adam mentioned. In fact, I did email to Janine here an option that looked at the comment from the Plan Commission, but we really support the proposal as you see it here tonight and are looking for final approval to move forward. We think that this responds to the comments that you raised in terms of overall simplification and a more cohesive expression all the way around the building. And so we're excited to move this forward, again, as the final piece of the puzzle within the Grandview Commons Town Center. We think this would be a great addition to that and are excited to move forward. And so any comments that you might have tonight that could help clarify or direct us in ways to refine and enhance, we would very much appreciate that. But again, we're looking for final approval so that we can move forward and get the project moving. So I'll keep it brief. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Let's see. There's one more applicant, Daniel Zutter, wishing to speak. Registered wishing to speak.
Actually, I think Adam covered most of the topics. Dan, I don't know if you had other things that you wanted to add in on top of Adam or not.
Dan, you should have a prompt to unmute yourself on your phone.
He's good, thanks. He was there for backup.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. Questions or comments from the commission? If you noticed in the report, there were some comments from the Plan Commission. I think that's on the bottom of the first page of our report, and then on the second page of the report are some of our comments from last time that we asked to be addressed. Tom.
Yeah, a quick question, just for clarification. Which version of the building did the Plan Commission see? The original or the proposed?
They saw the proposed.
They did. So yes. Their comments are based on the proposed.
That is correct. And as I said, I did email a concept that responded to some of theirs to Janine, if you'd like to see those. But again, we felt that this was a good expression responding to what the comments you had were.
Then the one other question, I think I know the answer. Do you have a elevation or perspective of the whole northern face, because I did not see where it was broken up as they suggested, but I also just didn't see one elevation that showed the entire northern face of the building.
Well, that's what's in front of you. Is the north elevation on the bottom there of the screen. The perspective was the last one we were on, because that's the north side of the building. The shadows are a little tough.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted Janine to jump to this one so you can see that. But that break is right in the middle there, just to the right and left of the break line. And it's extended a little bit just for context, but so right in the middle there by the break line. Yeah.
Okay, that's hard to read usually. Okay, there. Okay, that's clearer. That's clearer. That's what I was looking for. Okay. Yeah. Now you can see it. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else, Tom? Shane's got his hand raised.
Thank you.
I'll just briefly add that I appreciate looking at the addition of planters and separation of that public space under the canopy and overhang from the west end of the parking lot. I think that's a nice improvement. I also like the switch of materials from the brick site walls to the stone masonry that matches the rest of the building. So thank you.
Okay. If there's no further questions or comments, perhaps one of the commissioners is mulling a motion. Lois?
I'll make a motion for final approval.
Okay. A second on the motion? Shane, is that a second? Okay. Any discussion on the motion? No discussion on the motion. So the motion is for final approval with the design as presented this evening. If I don't see any hands raised, an objection or wishing to have a discussion. Oh, here's Tom. Go ahead.
I won't vote approval, so I'm sorry to force you into a roll call, but.
Okay, that's fine. All right. Let's see, before we ask Janine for the roll call, is there any other further discussion on the motion? Okay. Janine, would you mind taking the roll and counting the votes?
So I'm going to briefly allow everyone to unmute themselves. So you should have a unmute button.
Thank you.
For this roll call.
Thank you, Stefan. Commissioner DeShant.
No.
Commissioner Harper.
Yes.
Commissioner Knudsen.
Yes.
Commissioner Clare.
No.
Commissioner Bernot.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown Otto.
Yes.
Alder Abbas.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So there were any questions from the chair?
Nope. Okay, so you have your final approval. Thank you very much for the additional presentation and appearance. And we can then move on to new business, item number 8, which is 10,009 Sweet Willow Pass. Go to my registrants here. Looks like we have one person wishing to speak and support Greg Held.
Greg, you should be unmuted.
Yep, I'm ready to go. Is Janine going to introduce the project at all, or do I just go straight to it?
I think Janine is probably going to advance the images, and we would ask you to speak. If you could keep your presentation to 3 minutes, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, this is my first Zoom UDC. I'll try to keep it brief.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm Greg Held from Canothie and Bruce Architects, and I'm here representing Cascade Development. The first image is an aerial from the plat rezoning submittal, just to kind of orient you to where we're at. Mineral Point Road runs east and west along the top of the image. South Point Road runs vertically down the middle of the image, and Valley View Road runs east and west along the bottom. The western addition to 1000 Oaks plat is bounded by the red dashed line on Valley View Road. Our site is the dark red shaded area on Valley View Road. Image 2, please. This is the master plan for the overall plat showing the street and lot layouts. The yellow and orange lots are various single-family home types. The purple lots are duplex lots. Our site is the brown multifamily lot at the southeast corner of the plat. The lot is zoned for 110 units. Next image, please. These are the existing conditions photos taken a few weeks ago. At the time they were taken, they were clearing the site. I think they probably now progressed to mass grading, and then they'll go into infrastructure, roads and utilities, et cetera. The intent is that they'll continue through with this, and then our schedule would be to be building if possible as soon as they're ready for us. Next photo, please, or next image. Okay, this is our proposed site plan. One thing I'll note is that there's a significant amount of topography on this site. There's about 27 feet of fall from east to west along Valley View Road. After they do the initial mass grading on the site for the entire plat, most of that topography will be concentrated on the eastern quarter of the site. For that reason, we've located any buildings or parking in that area. We've oriented the buildings on the site to address the street frontage, and we're providing private entrances connected to the public sidewalk with grade permits. The primary entrance to the development is aligned with Ladybug Lane, which is across the street from our entrance on Sweet Willow Pass. We have a secondary access point located farther west on Sweet Willow Pass, which only serves the basement parking under building number 1. We were not allowed to access the private alley that exists west of our site. Surface parking is located to the interior of the site and is screened by the buildings from the street. Buildings 1 and 2 are connected by a 2-story common area with a pool, recreational facilities, and offices for on-site management. Next image, please. For our elevations, our client asked us for a clean, modern design, which we interpreted with flat roofs and cantilever projecting elements on the facade. Our exterior finish materials are composite panels, vertical steel siding, and horizontal siding, lap siding, I should say. The facade is articulated at material transitions, and changes in finish material are accompanied by a change in plane. The material transitions are further accentuated by parapet heights, with each material having its own corresponding parapet height. Janine, if you want to run down towards the renderings, I think those show a little bit better the articulation of the building and the changes in materials and the parapet heights. So we've got a series of renderings here that are from the street elevations, working your way around the site.
Okay, that is about 4 minutes, so we're going to have to move on to commission comments or questions. Now this is, I don't think we've seen this before, but they are asking for final approval tonight, so there should be, as we can see the materials here, there should be a full landscape plan. We've seen the site plan. Are there any questions? Alder Abbas.
One quick question about stormwater with this, the landscape look like it's have a substantial amount of slope. So what we are doing with water runoff and stormwater?
Okay, I can unmute Mr. Held to address that question.
This site was part of the overall subdivision or plat, and the stormwater for this entire plat is handled at the plat level. My understanding is that we have to provide grease control on our parking lots, but beyond that, everything is kind of been master planned into this as far as detention and infiltration.
Okay, maybe on the, so if we look at, I guess it was like the second image, Janine, I think that had an overall plat map that kind of shows that. Yeah, there we go. So it's kind of at the top in the middle.
At the southwest corner, you can see the stormwater management area.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so there's actually two areas identified. Okay. Let's see.
Looks like Alder Boss has another comment.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for muting myself. So we can see here stormwater 7 acre and 1.9 acre. I think so. With Ramesh Farm, they also give a presentation, a next group on the north side, and they were also proposing on-site stormwater. And during that presentation, I mentioned about, as a commission, we might also look for the design, how it will fit within the community, how that size of water, just like, it's substantial. 7 acres is a substantial amount of land. So I'm just curious if there is any design of stormwater, like how the green area look like around, either it's going to be some concrete and cement around, like how you can contain it. And also from safety point of view, if the kids are playing surrounding, there's a 1.9 acre stormwater right there behind the homes. I'm just curious how much depth it is, and if there's additional information would be really good. And as a commission, we should, because this will come more often in front of us because of the new stormwater ordinance. So I'm just curious if there's some additional information on stormwater.
I personally don't have any additional information on it. As I said, it was part of the design of the plat. It would have all gone through all of the staff departments, engineering, for approval of that separately from this particular parcel being here tonight.
Yeah, I understand your point, and I also understand from staff point of view, if you put in a design, you fulfill the ordinance requirement. I think so it might be, after this meeting, might be we as a commissioner should discuss about design of the stormwater, if this is something we want to look as a UDC or not. Mm-hmm. Might be this is something we can take offline.
Okay, thank you. Janine, I believe our authority then is tonight is limited to the site specific site boundaries that we really aren't able to make comments on the overall development design or the overall stormwater design.
That is my understanding, and I think Kevin Furco is available, and it looks like he has his hand raised. He might be able to add a little more to that.
All right. I hit the unmute button there, Kevin.
Yes, Janine is correct. As far as the UDC's role for this project, it is limited to the multifamily building complex on the site. And then as noted in Janine's report, the role of the commission in this review is to review the exterior design and appearance of the principal buildings and the landscape plans for the proposed concept. But so that's where your review is limited tonight.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, you had your hand raised.
I had a question just in the plan about the swimming pool and access to it. So one question is that swimming pool only for the people in this part of the development? And if you live in building 3, how do you get to that swimming pool? Do you have to go through that gallery area? I forgot what you called it. Do you have to go through that, or do you have to go around? And I'm questioning closing off that node right there and the necessity of having that closed, or if you'd want access through there. Just curious about it. Also, if we're going for final approval tonight, I think I would want more information about, is there a fence around that pool? How are you, how is it protected? How is it kept private from anybody walking down the street, that kind of thing. So that part to me is a little vague, and it's kind of a prominent corner, so I'm pretty curious about it.
Maybe you'd like to address those 2 questions?
Sure. So access to the pool, that connector area is a common area. Think of it as a community room or a clubhouse. It'll have an exercise room, maybe a yoga room and a community room. The pool would be accessed through that area. There'll probably be some offices for on-site management in that area. So buildings 1 and 2 are directly connected to that common building and would be able to internally walk, staying inside down the corridor and into that commons area, and then out into the pool, which of course would be restrooms for that. The pool would of course have a 5-foot fence around it. We can't open a pool that doesn't have a secure fence around it. Also, as far as the view of the pool, at that point, the pool deck is actually several feet above Valley View Road. Because of all that topography and Valley View Road dropping off so quickly, and we can't drop our buildings quite as fast as grade does, what happens is building 2 is connected to that commons area at the basement level, and building number 1 is connected to the commons level at the 1st floor level. So there's internal connection and internal circulation from building 1 and 2. If you're in building number 3, you have to go outside and walk across. You can kind of see a sidewalk, and there'd be an accessible route from building 3 then over to the commons area. You'd go through the commons area into the pool. Not really any different than we've done plenty of pools with freestanding clubhouses that all the buildings have to walk from the detached building to this pool area. So in this case, because we would have loved to have connected all of these buildings to the clubhouse, but because of the topography on the site and the need to separate the buildings, it just didn't work that way. So we wound up with a freestanding building up there on the north side of the site.
Okay, thank you. Shane, and then Lois.
Thank you. I have a handful of landscape comments, and I'll start first just by moving towards that issue that we're not necessarily supposed to review, and that's stormwater again. And I think the parking lot island, in terms of a landscape feature, is a prime opportunity to intercept some of that stormwater before it hits the storm sewer. It's kind of just dead landscape space, not terribly usable anyways. So if soils permitted that to be a shallow depression with a bioretention type swale, I think that would be a perfect opportunity for it. And something I would like to see is both a stormwater, but also a landscape feature. A couple other smaller things I noticed was that I think some of the plant material at the building corners felt a little small, not substantial enough to really anchor the corners of the buildings. And I think it would benefit from maybe having like an ornamental scale tree, especially, I know there weren't a lot of plants in the renderings, but if you can envision having something at those building corners, there's places where the grade change really drops off. So you get large areas of wall, either site wall or architecture, that I think would benefit from having something larger than just a shrub at those corners. And then lastly, I think one opportunity that is maybe missed is at the parking lot side, in the entry to the common space, you have some bike stalls there, which is great, but also some sod lawn. And I think that would be another prime opportunity to get rid of the lawn and do more of a low landscape feature planting, really announce that as a more public space and more of a public entry. So something like lower ornamental grasses with maybe flowering perennials occupying that entire inside corner instead of having lawn and dealing with, desire paths or cow paths through it would be an improvement. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Lois? And then Russell, I'm going to try unmuting you one more time here.
There you go. I am unmuted now, I think.
Okay.
So I like the simplicity of the building and the way you've made each kind of block element a different color and a little bit of some height difference. The one thing I would change is the corner elements where you have that vertical column in the corner of the balconies. It's the corner supporting element there. It looks a little, I think I would make it the dark color so it recedes a little bit, because just having that kind of spear going up through those balconies is a little distracting from that nice rhythm of cubicle forms. I have a question about those balconies. Are they wood framed, or what is the construction of them? Because we're always concerned about what they look like from underneath.
Am I still unmuted? I am. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just going back to the landscape comments, I don't disagree with those opportunities in any way. I think that's some good suggestions. The balcony at the corner, I also agree with that comment. I don't know for sure if I want to mix colors yet, but I would definitely want to do something maybe different with that one that's sticking up, like you said, like a spear up through the dark element. I think we need to do something with that. And then as far as the construction of the decks, what we're doing is it's a typical wood frame deck, but we're going to wrap it with a painted steel trim piece. Miscellaneous, it's an MC section, MC 12.3, I think it is. It's basically a steel C channel that's painted, and it's not so heavy that it's too much to hang off of a wood deck. So.
And what does that look like underneath? What is the
underneath? It's typical deck construction.
Okay. So I think, if there's even if that is stained that very dark brown color, so that recedes as well, and you don't see treated wood.
We could we could get there is a brown treated wood that we've used on quite a few projects that at least doesn't stand out like the green stuff. The problem is that the decking is open, so we can't really put a ceiling on it per se. The decking above lets water through, so we have to be a little careful with what we do with it. But I think
I'm not suggesting you close it off. I'm just saying that if it's finished in a darker color, it'll recede and you won't see it, because right now you have all these kind of nice solid colors, and then to see the construction of the floor decking underneath, I think would be distracting for that corner of the building. Well, for
Agreed.
everywhere.
I agree.
And then my final comment is in the landscape plan on the east side, the east border of the property. I am imagining that that's all mowed grass.
Yes. Yep. It's a fairly steep slope, but it is mowable.
It seems like it's an opportunity, because it is also very steep, and I think that can get kind of tricky to maintain as lawn or as grass. Is that a potential like little forested area to kind of buffer this development from the next adjacent site, and also just to put some trees back.
I think there'd be an opportunity for that. At what point, though, does it become more difficult to maintain until those trees are of a size that I guess I could consider that.
Mm-hmm. I think it would look nice to have this kind of nice wilderness area, kind of as it goes from manicured lawn and have some nice canopy trees and make it a little wild.
Okay. Yep.
Looks like it slopes up about 15 feet or so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Russell, and then Shane again.
Thank you. I'm on the fence about Mountain Sage. I can't decide whether I really like it. It's bold, or if it's like I say, I'm on the fence. I agree with Jessica on the need to understand how that pool is going to be separated from that public walk area. I think you really need to understand the plan there. Similarly, it'd be nice for the render. They're very nice renderings, but there's no. You're not really articulating the tree plantings along that same elevation where the pool area is. It'd be nice to see. They are on the landscape plan, just not on the renderings. What I'm able to see here, so I would like to see that. Is the question for you that it appears the Commons is a 2-story building there, and is that a balcony that's overlooking the pool?
Yes, there's a plaza area on the second floor of the Commons area.
How is that second floor accessed? Is there a stair internally?
Internal stair, yeah. There's an internal stair, and it will actually be connected through to both buildings as well. Might be an opportunity to maybe have a monumental stair, or expose that circulation might look nice. For sure.
On the inside.
So we'll be able to have an open stairway on that in that Commons area.
So depending on what you're going to do about the view of that pool, I think gives us a little more perspective on how much of that Commons we see from the walkway out here. So I think there's a lot more we could look at there. And then since this is for final, I'm curious. Well, actually, sorry, 2 more questions. Are you achieving the parapet changes? Are the roof changes with parapet only, or are you anticipating the roof actually changing elevations at all those jogs?
We typically do it just with the parapet.
Okay.
We might pull the returns back so they don't look so fake, but we don't jog the actual surface of the roof.
Yeah, you can here. There's one here. You can see a little the white bump out above the 2 white cars. That how you treat that might be important. And then one last comment. Heating and cooling for the units are in the louvers in the balcony area.
They're in the balcony area, and they won't be facing the street facade.
And every unit has a balcony. That I wasn't able to tell that from the plan.
Yeah, every unit will have a balcony, and we've got kind of a mixture of through wall units that will be on the side return walls, or some of the units will actually have split system furnaces internal in the unit.
And sorry, one more question too. I am seeing, at least on the renderings, the glazing. It might just be the way that the rendering is reflecting, but there's some that have a kind of a copper tone on the glazing, and some that are blue. Is that intentional, or is that just a rendering effect?
No, it's just the way the light bounces around in the rendering.
But you're looking for a consistent look.
It would be the same glazing throughout.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, Shane. And then Jessica?
I just quickly wanted to follow up on Lois's comment because I thought it was very insightful, and that is a lot of grass on a slope to mow. So I would very much agree with Lois's comment. But as an alternative to maybe a forested space, just knowing the character of this part of Madison and transitioning to the driftless area of Wisconsin, a short grass prairie or tall grass prairie or some other lower maintenance ground cover would be really nice in that type of space with that much exposure. So that would be another recommendation or alternative recommendation, I guess, for that sloped space. And it doesn't have to be exclusive of trees. It could be more of a savanna type space as well. But I think the main point being is that is not a great use of resources and not a great site for turf grass lawn. So I think an alternative would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Jessica.
Yeah, I might have missed it. When I look at the site plan, there's a lot of paving for the parking. Am I understanding it right that each building has underground parking as well?
Yeah, the parking ratio on this is all of the buildings have underground parking, at least one stall per unit underground, and then whatever we have on the surface is what we need to get up to about I think we're about 1.7 to 1. I think that statistic is probably on that site plan, Janine, second to the last sheet in the presentation. We should have the site statistics on there, but for these suburban sites, this is not any more parking than would be considered necessary, I guess.
Okay.
In the upper left hand, there should be a parking statistics right in that area. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, had a lot of comments. Christian.
Yeah, just one small point. Looking over the landscape plan on there, I'm sure it's just a kind of typographical type error, perhaps by your landscape architect. But on the plan, there's plants on the islands and around the buildings. That's called RR. Uppercase R, lowercase r, but if you look on that plant key, there's nothing that doesn't exist on there. I think just by a quick, glance at it, I think it's possibly supposed to be representing a rugosa type rose, but I wasn't able to ascertain that. So you might want to check with your landscape architect and get that straightened out so we can see what that plant is supposed to be. I would also go along with some of the previous comments that area to the east is, ripe for opportunity. Having large swaths of traditionally kept turf grass, I would agree is not a great use for that space. More trees, widely spaced. I think with what Shane suggested of a short grass prairie type stuff would be really nice. And I could see where you might have some wide paths that go through there. For people to walk their dogs or whatever. And, I've even seen places where there is some, mown turf that's adjacent to that. But then, outside of a small buffer of that, then you go to something that's, that's a little more wild and low maintenance. Yeah, just have, turf on there. we don't need more of that. We're already taking these type of properties around the fringes of the city, and taking away their capacity to be sort of a responsible part of our environment. And I'm not averse to having some maintained turf in the areas close to buildings and stuff, but on a large parcel like that, it's certainly a chance to do something a little more imaginative and aesthetically as well as environmentally more in tune with our times.
Okay, thank you. Lois.
Les, I as you oriented us back to the landscape plan, Christian, I was noticing there's a lot of stone mulch and around the building. And so we discourage that because it becomes a maintenance problem, and plants don't like to, they won't thrive in that environment. But you reoriented me to that, but my main question is, what type of, you said a fence around the pool, and I shudder to think it would be a cyclone fence or something like that. I would encourage you to do something that gives them a little bit of privacy, like maybe bring part of that brick wall around there. So I'd like to see that.
I think our typical at a minimum would be a aluminum picket, with probably 3/4 or 1 inch pickets every 4.5 inches on center. So it's a fair amount it's a little bit of screening. But again, I'll mention that pool deck is probably 4.5. The base of the pool deck is probably 4 feet above the sidewalk at that point where it occurs.
But it still needs a fence. And I'm not sure a picket fence is in keeping with the aesthetic of the building development. It's those nice clean lines, and then you have a picket fence, which is, would be fine if it was a single family home and you had a dog on the other side of it. But I kind of feel like it warrants something a little bit more designed in keeping with the design of the buildings, especially since it is kind of on that prominent corner.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? The application is for final. So we have options. We can deny or approve or refer. There is no application for initial, and I'm not sure what that would gain anybody anyway.
That would allow them to go to Plan Commission.
So they do need, okay, so although the request is for final only, we can grant initial, and they do need to go to Plan Commission?
Correct.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Shane.
That's good to know. I think I'd be willing to make a motion for initial approval, even if that's not specifically requested on the application. Given many of the comments that we've heard tonight about landscaping, including the ground cover of the hillside on the east side of the site, some of my comments about foundation plantings and parking lot planting islands, also comments on the underside detailing and materiality of the underside of the balconies, and the fence or wall or enclosure around the pool area.
Okay, is there a second on that? I see your hands raised, Lois.
Can I add, are we supposed to see a lighting plan too? I don't see lighting anywhere in this package, or did I miss it?
I think there was in the full submittal.
Oh, in the full, okay.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I was just going to second it and ask for the lighting, but if the lighting is there, I guess I just didn't see it. All right. So second. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? I would add as a request for final that we receive a roof plan. I think one of the comments was, how do these parapets return and how do they, not just look like two-dimensional slabs sticking up in the air? So we could evaluate that with a roof plan, I think. Okay. I don't see any hands raised for further discussion. So I am going to ask anybody opposed to raise their hand. Otherwise, by unanimous consent, we are granting initial approval for item number 8. Great. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you back again soon. Number 9 was approved through the consent agenda. So that brings us to item number 10 is 7050 Watts Road, single-story restaurant building.
We do have a number of registrants for this item. Jennifer Moen is registered requesting to speak. Matthew Henry Bood is registered in support and available to answer questions. Julie Waymer is also registered in support and available to answer questions. And then finally, Daniel Stewart is listed in support and available to answer questions.
Fantastic. Okay. So we'll start with Jennifer.
Good afternoon. I just want to clarify, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Jennifer Mowen. I'm with Greenberg Farrow. We are the architectural and civil engineering consultants for Texas Roadhouse Restaurants. As Janine mentioned, I have our architect, Julie Waymeyer, on, our civil engineer, Matthew Booty, as well as Daniel Stewart, the civil engineer for the seller. Texas Roadhouse is looking to purchase approximately a 1.42 acre outlet along the North Avenue of Watts Road from At Home. They are the current landowner. And next page, Janine, please. What you see here is the plan that came before the Urban Design Commission, as you're probably aware, back in February. This is the approved site plan as part of the amended GDP approval to carve out the lot. We were aware of this plan. We're working very closely with At Home. We do have the disposition letters for the GDP and the CSM. So we're fully aware of all of the conditions of approval that were previously discussed. Also, just so you know, At Home has reviewed our submission package and they've approved all of our preliminary plans to date. Next slide, please. The site and landscape plan here, we've incorporated the conditions of approval. We've maintained a minimum 20-foot deep landscape buffer along Watts Road and its narrowest point. And then our edge of pavement for the parking field matches the approved plan. So we do not encroach upon that green space in the buffer. We have relocated the sidewalk along Watts Road 8 feet into the site per conditions of the approval. We've also provided a bench pad at the Metro bus stop, again, a condition of approval. And we have provided sidewalks along the northern and eastern side of our lot for pedestrian circulation around the property. And then per staff comments, we have provided an ADA accessible route from the front door of the building. It goes out the front door down to the south, crosses the parking field to the east, it goes along down to Watts Road and over to the bus stop. We've graded the site to retain as many of the existing trees in the Watts Road buffer as possible. We've put in a retaining wall that's shown on the plan there in the southwest corner, the bolded line that zigs and zags, there it is, zigs and zags along the parking field there. We've put that retaining wall in specifically to preserve the trees. Otherwise, that retaining wall would not be needed otherwise. It's approximately 210 feet in length, and at its highest point, it goes up to about 4 to 5 feet. And one of the trees just north of the bench pad, unfortunately, did have to be removed for the bench pad. Next page, please. This is a view looking towards the southwest corner of the building. So we've got the south and west elevations. We're primarily a wood cedar building with brick wainscoting and a standing seam metal roof. Next slide, please. This is a view looking at the northeast corner of the building, so the east elevation and the north elevation. Texas Roadhouse has recently implemented a separate to-go vestibule, so you'll see that there just to the right of the front door. It's served a great purpose here during COVID, and it's something that they plan to keep going forward. It allows guests to come in, pick up their order, and not have to mix and mingle with the crowd that's sitting in the waiting area inside. Next slide, please. These are just two-dimensional building elevations. We've added on the rear elevation there at the bottom. Typically that wall is blank. It's where the back of the house is, the kitchen, the office and whatnot. We have added a couple of faux windows and some brick pilasters to break up the massing of that wall. Next slide, please. And same thing on the left elevation, we've thrown in some brick pilasters, again, to break up that area of the wall where on the interior is the back of house. Next slide, please. Last slide here is a sightline study we wanted to put together. Our RTUs sit, it's basically like a bathtub effect. They sit mostly behind the parapet walls. As you can see, the roof slopes towards the back of the building. The view we took from Watts Road, we do believe that most of the vegetation that remains will help to buffer any views. But we did want to take a cross section where that vegetation unfortunately needed to be thinned out for our grading. So you can see we believe that the RTUs at their highest point will be not visible from Watts Road. So with that said, myself and the rest of my team are available for any questions you may have, and we're excited to be back in Madison again.
Thank you very much. That's all for the registrants wishing to speak. Are there any questions or comments for our applicant tonight? This is an informational presentation, so I'm sure they would appreciate feedback before an official submittal. Shane and then Lois.
All right, thank you. I'll jump right into it again with some landscape comments. First of all, I think the site plan that we see is significantly better than what we saw previously. And I appreciate the additional sidewalks and circulation, accessibility around the space, the location of bike racks and everything. That looks all significantly better than I remember last time. As you may know or may recall, the landscape buffer was definitely a point of discussion in that space alongside the road on Watts. I think just revisiting what's excuse me, currently there today, it is just really nice and effective in screening the views of everything behind it from the neighbors to the south. So I'm sure that the neighborhood will still feel a bit of that loss from removing some of those larger, mature landscape species. I would say my comment on that space is like, give us a reason to think it's better. And so I think an area of improvement is potentially that you could landscape the corner. Obviously, there's vision triangle requirements at the intersection, but you could kind of announce the corner with landscaping, something more than just lawn spaces. But if there was a new landscape buffer within the space that you're given that's better than what's there now or better than just lawn, I think that would definitely be a point to prove and make it easier for us to approve in the future presentations. And the only other thing I think I'll add with that is keep in mind safety if you do add more planting in that buffer space. So keeping the 3 to 6 foot zone open, adding things maybe like ornamental trees that would occupy more of that space just above 6 feet, but also be a visual screen. So you get the best of both worlds. You get views to the property, but the long view to the surface parking beyond the Texas Roadhouse is screened better from Watts Road and the neighbors to the south. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Lois?
Thank you, Commissioner. I understand this is a branded building, but is there any opportunity to add more windows to at the very least, the front facade or anywhere where there would be customers on the inside? I understand the back of house issue, but it seems like there's a lot more opportunity there.
Julie, do you want to take that one? If we could go to Julie Waymeyer, please.
Okay.
Julie, you should have a prompt to unmute yourself.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, great. Thank you. So one of the reasons the windows are located exactly where they're at is because, like you said, it is a branded building. In part, also, the decor on the inside and the way that the placements of the booths are on the inside dictates where those different windows are located so that the guests can see outside, but then there's also the decor that is part of that brand. There are a couple opportunities where if we needed to put additional spandrel windows on, we probably could, but those are not going to provide any additional view corridors for the guests within the side of the building.
Yeah, I wouldn't encourage any spandrel, any more spandrel, but I think there's a benefit to a transparency for buildings like this, and so and it just looks so. I know there's a lot of wood on the outside, and I think it would help lighten that because you have not only the areas in the back where you have kind of the windows, but then there's the areas on the second tier that's kind of the fake slatted closed windows. I don't know. I think that it would look much better, a little less heavy.
We can take a look at that. We'll take a look at that.
The first time I saw it looked fortressy, so that's what I would.
I think with this view, it especially does. I can understand your comment there, and we'll take a look at that and see if there's anything we can do.
Thank you.
Jessica?
Yeah, I'm going to follow up with Lois on the exterior look of the building. And those pilasters on the back of house, the brick pilasters that they look like they end in a limestone cap or maybe a concrete cap. What struck me was the words you used when you were describing those, that I don't know if you meant to say it, but you said you threw them on there. So I would question the need for them and the way they look too. I know you've got a brand and you're trying to break up that facade, but I wonder if there might be other ways to break up that facade without putting up pilasters that are clearly not needed structurally or anything like that. It just seems tacked on, and I question it. I wonder if maybe you could even think about taking that wood paneling and maybe some of it is extruded out or extruded in, so you get some shade and shadow on there to liven it up a little bit. I just careful with those pilasters. That's all.
Thank you for that comment. We'll go ahead and take a look at that and see if there are some other ideas that we can incorporate to give us some additional flair over there.
Yeah, I guess I would add that, I mean, it's maybe even more fundamental than just a few little adjustments to a brick here or a shutter there. I mean, you basically got a dining area, a pitched roof element, and then you've got a big flat roof element. I know that this is kind of modeled on something we see on the freeway. I've seen a million of them, or a lot of them anyway. But this is more of a neighborhood, and I think we're asking that you make it more contextual, make it more responsive to the site. This is not, by the interstate. This is, although it's in a shopping center, it is right down the road as a residential neighborhood, and there's mature trees in the lot and so forth. When you look at the fake windows and the vertical siding and the horizontal siding and the lights on the roof and the little portico that's a point, but it doesn't have anything behind it. It's very kind of stage set, and this is a real building in a real neighborhood. So I would encourage you to break free from and try not to be encumbered so much by the cookie cutter stuff that we see on the highway. It's a tall order. I know you're going to probably meet with a lot of resistance, but that's the request. Tom.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question, is given what we're all experiencing now with how restaurants survive with outdoor eating space, is there there's no program here for outdoor space? I'm just wondering why, and is that not part of the franchise model, or could it be?
Both are still unmuted.
Jennifer, did you want to talk about that, or do you want me to get into it?
Yeah, I can talk about it. Sorry, it's showing that I'm muted. Still trying to work through the virtual format here. I apologize for that. Texas Roadhouse has never really engaged in an outdoor dining program. Up until COVID, it's been all about the experience on the inside of the building. If you've ever been in one, it's a very lively atmosphere on the inside. Obviously, with COVID, that brings a whole nother element to this. They have been experimenting, with temporary measures for some outdoor dining as they work through COVID. So that would be something that we would have to get back to them on to see where they stand with those items. But again, it hasn't been their focus. They're focused heavily on their to-go operations, the pickup. And that's why you see the separate to-go door there. But again, we could get back with them. Things are changing, daily as everybody navigates through this whole new world. And Julie, if there's anything, you want to add to that as well?
I think that was pretty much what I was going to say. I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. I would just following up just what Cliff said about the fact that there is a neighborhood right across from this. And in fact, there are not a lot of eating opportunities out there. I kind of think it would be somewhat attractive to the neighborhood to have an outdoor component to this site. So it's take it back to corporate and see if they'll consider. Thank you.
Sure. Yep. We'll definitely do that.
Okay, this is an informational presentation. Russell?
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking about the neighborhood as well, and it would be nice to understand and maybe see a little bit more about illumination at night. You very clearly are showing the fixtures, and it looks like you're gearing up to light the flags from basically all angles here. But kind of seeing this at nighttime, what really the plan is for that look would be very helpful.
Sure, we can do that for the next submittal.
Okay. And you should be acquainted with our dark sky ordinance with all those lights on the roof. We're not trying to attract aliens, we're trying to keep a low profile.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you for your presentation. I hope you found the feedback that you received here helpful, and we look forward to seeing you in the future on a submittal. That brings us to item number 11, Chapter 1 of the Kevin Burrow portion of our program. The next 3 items will be his. So settle in.
4 registrants for item number 11. Kevin Burrow is registered to speak, and then there are 3 people registered in support and either available for questions or do not want to speak. Joseph Krupp, Kevin Yeska, and Tyler Krupp.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kevin, anytime you're ready, you can go ahead and kick off. This is 1224 South Park Street.
All right, thank you. Good evening. My name is Kevin Burrow with Northern Moose Architects. So what we have before you is the proposed redevelopment of 1224 South Park, which is shown in the yellow at the center of the screen there. It's directly north of the existing Pick and Save site and north of the Truman Olson site, for those that are familiar with that development that's also coming through in the near future. Next slide, please. So our proposal is to remove the existing 1-story commercial building and replace it with a 5-story mixed-use building that has vehicular parking accessed on 2 levels. High Street is actually a full story below South Park Street, such that we're able to drive directly into the underground parking off of High Street, which does dead end into a new cul-de-sac. And then there's parking accessible off of South Park Street on the northern end of the site, which takes you to enclosed and sheltered parking. And then the entire first floor will be commercial space fronting along South Park Street, and then also have our building lobby entrance. We proposed a C-shaped building such that we're able to create a plaza deck on top of the enclosed parking on first floor. So at the second floor level is that plaza area, which is shown in the middle there. And then the building does step back at the upper stories per the UDD 7 ordinances to create a variation in the facade. Next slide, please. Here's the initial landscape plan that has been put together. One thing I'd like to clarify is the fact that we are working with the city on relocating the sidewalk further back onto the property. So we're granting a 3-foot wide easement under our property so that the sidewalk can be shifted back to accommodate an 8-foot wide terrace along South Park Street. And then also with that, we're also setting the building back 10 feet from the property line such that we're able to net about 8.5 feet of a landscape buffer between the building and the newly located sidewalk further in on the property, just so we can achieve a higher level of landscaping and help create an experience as you approach the building along South Park Street. And then we also have a 20-foot rear yard area as well, which will be landscaped. And part of that will be dedicated to the city for a future bike path off the south end of High Street to connect further south. Next slide, please. For the exterior architecture, within the packet tonight, we actually have two concepts that we would like to quickly go through with regards to the exterior. And they all revolve around the location of the upper story step back. The initial plan shown here shows the step back occurring at the 4th floor level, directly above the 3rd floor. So we've got predominantly a masonry building located along South Park Street with a high level of detail in the masonry, which will become more apparent as we get into the renderings. And then the upper story is stepped back 15 feet as required. And then we've got the opportunity for larger walkout patios on the 4th floor level and then balconies above that. The entire 1st floor is all commercial space, as I mentioned, and then the lobby entrance is adjacent to the driveway to the enclosed parking on 1st floor as well. Next slide, please. So again, here's a side view showing the step back occurring above the 3rd story. And then that masonry detailing does carry around both sides of the building. And where we do have the enclosed parking, we've deliberately created the appearance of what would be a sort of a bricked in window look using a slightly different color masonry as a detail element to create some interest along those lower facades. Next slide, please. Here's some perspective views and where you can see how the building is situated on the site. At this point, Park Street is a boulevard, so this is all one-way traffic heading southbound. So you can see the step back occurring at the 3rd floor, above the 3rd floor level shown here. Next slide. Here's a closer view then, as you can see the access to the 1st floor level parking. And then some of the brick detailing is starting to become more apparent with the accent bands along the base of the building, the trim detailing along the windows, and then the inset, more of a glazed tile type look, both at the 1st floor and then at the 3rd floor levels as well. Next slide, please. Here's another view then further down Park Street, again, where you can see the level of detail that we've created with the masonry, even as it wraps around the corner and along the parking lot of the Pick and Save building. Next slide. So here's the parking lot view of the Pick and Save area as well. So you can see the detailing of those inset 1st floor level windows in the brick detailing. Next slide. So here's the comparison that we'd love to get your input on as regards to moving the step back up to the 5th floor level above the 4th floor so we can create more of a stronger masonry base of building and have it, in our opinion, feel a bit more balanced with regards to the stronger base and then just a 1-story step back at the upper story. So the same level of detail occurs, everything just moves up 1 story. With this transition, we are able to pick up, we transition from 59 units to 62 units. We are able to gain 3 more units. As we know, the density is truly needed in Madison. So that is one benefit. Next slide, please. So here's the side views again, where now you can see that we've created a 4-story element fronting along South Park Street. We did transition back down to the 3-story in the lower portion, or the back portions of the building. Next slide. So with these perspective views, these really help enhance the fact that now the 5th floor level is basically disappearing from view in most areas along South Park Street. You'd have to be back a ways in order to truly see that facade element. Next slide. So here's a close-up view again, where now the 5th floor is basically non-existent or not within view, but you do have the opportunity of those larger patios still up at the 5th floor level. Next slide. Here again, you can see how the building has disappeared at the upper story, and the level of detail again has been maintained throughout the masonry. Next slide. And then the final view here is you can see the side perspective, again, seeing that step back and how the rear portion of the building is 5 stories and the front portion is now 4 stories. There's additional slides in the packet here, but I'll stop there and love to get some feedback on these concepts.
Okay, thank you very much. Some of us have been on the commission long enough to remember we've seen this property with a former development proposed. So at least I recall the entrance in the street, the dead end there in the back, and how that all works. It's a tricky little site. Any questions or comments? Tom.
Yes, I will go out on a very fragile limb here, given neighborhood sentiments, but I quite immediately like the 4-story version better, and only from an architectural point of view. I think it feels more substantial, and in terms of the base, center, top, or crown, having the 3 stories in the middle as the center of the building. The first one that sets back at 3 stories looks like like the building's cut in half. And whereas this gives a very solid presence on Park Street. My only caveat is why, again, wouldn't you take the brick up on the sides of the building to match the 4-story height from the front? That seems a little odd to me. And I think it would just be more successful if it was 4 stories of brick all around. But that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Well, don't leave Tom out there all by himself on the limb. Okay, so I see, again, Alder Evers, let me unmute you and ask you for your input, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to say yes, this site, the previous, I've only been Alder for a year and a few months, but in that short time, there was an approval for a 2-story office building that would be primarily for medical or dental offices at this site, which neighbors were reluctant to give their blessing to. The sensibility or the feedback I got was that is a waste of space. Of all the complaints that we as Alders get about infill and density, sometimes neighbors do see that, wow, that it really does make sense on a place like right on South Park Street. So I want to let you all know that this Alder representing this neighborhood is in favor of this project with this scale and this density. And it does address one of our big challenges about needing more housing. Mr. Deschamps is correct in that sometimes residents complain about things like, I've heard the phrase the canyon effect regarding the height and scaling of buildings, which seems to conflict with their recognition that we need that kind of scaling. I like the 4-story going up to 5 personally. I haven't heard any feedback to the contrary, but I just want everybody to know on the committee that I really welcome this development. I also in conversations with the developer about elements that are not related to design. And I have to, again, compliment the developer willing to have those challenging conversations. That's an indication that they want to work with the neighborhood and work with the Alder. Thank you.
Thank you. Lois, your hand is raised.
Thank you. So a couple of questions, Kevin, there's kind of a square, is it a tile, glazed tile detail on the brick at about the top of the maybe transom height?
Yes, that is a glazed tile masonry element.
The way it's shown here has a little bit of a postmodern look to me. I'm wondering if I would prefer to see brick detailing where maybe you're using the brick in a textural way rather than inserting that glazed block. You know what I mean? It's like you're still using the same brick you have, but just more in a textural application. And then I do prefer the 4-story with the 5th recessed. And I'm wondering, I think I would almost like it better if the recessed portion was the dark color, so it completely recesses, and what you're really seeing the most of is the brick portion of the building.
So you're saying these 5th floor level siding element you prefer to see in the darker siding?
That's my personal preference, so it recedes even more than it is.
Okay, Thank you.
And then what is the material that is surrounding the doors? It's the lighter material again. Is that a different brick or? Yeah, right there.
Yes, that would be a cast stone element at the base.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Shane.
I was just going to say if Rafiq was here, I think I know what his opinion would be on this.
Well, go ahead and channel the guy. Let's hear what he has to say.
I think he would prefer the 4-story with just the step back at the 5, knowing how he feels about step backs in general. But I would agree. I think both options are pretty attractive. I think it's a nice infill project. But given the needs for density and the context and location of this specific project, I would also vote for the 4-story on Park Street.
Mm-hmm.
One other small comment I noticed was, and it's probably just because it's early, but some of the roof deck or roof patio spaces look just a little bland, like they could use some more life in them other than just being kind of a pedestal paver or hardscape space.
Thank you. Yep, one of the nice things about the project is the restraint that it exercises. And, it just has a real nice, comfortable, self-assured feel to it. It doesn't have a lot of bumps ups and down at the roof. Doesn't have an extraordinary amount of materials to compete with the design. I think the proportions are really nice, particularly in this view. And, as for the canyon effect, I mean, the building 4 stories, if you know how wide South Park Street is, curb to curb, including the median, it's anything but a canyon-like feel. And I think it's really nice also that they're moving starting to move the buildings back off of the sidewalk, because when we saw in context its neighbor to the north and see how cramped up it is to the sidewalk, hopefully future developments will back off a little bit and give that pedestrian experience something it deserves. So it's a really nice job. Any other comments? Jessica?
Yeah, I wanted to say I agree with you on particularly that north elevation. I'm looking at the straight orthographic views. Has really nice rhythm to it, and your vertical lines of masonry going all the way through is really nice on every facade, except just to be a pain in your butt. I'm looking at the colored north elevation, why the openings on the 5th floor differ than what's going on below. I realize you're stepping back, you're turning to siding or a different material than brick, but everything is so tight till you get to that part. And I just wonder if that's on purpose or it's something to be investigated. So that would be A sheet 2.3.
Yes, so the window configuration on the 5th floor is varied because the units are shallower in depth due to the step back. So a different configuration within the apartment such. We tried aligning as much as we could, but we also then created its own character up there to feel balanced when you're on that 5th floor patio area.
I think it's not very perceivable in real life, though.
Yeah.
Given the depth of the step back.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. This is informational. Would anybody else like to share some comments before we send them on their way and move on to chapter 2? Okay. Thank you very much. Nice project.
Thank you.
Don't go away.
Nope.
Okay, the next item is number 12, which is 7601 Mineral Point Road for a 4-story apartment building.
We have 2 people registered for this item. Kevin Burrow registered in support, wishing to speak, and then Sean O'Brien registered in support and available for questions.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. If you could call up our slides. So what we have before you is basically the proposed redevelopment of the Pizzeria Uno site. The building has been vacant for probably about 4 years now. And we're looking at doing a housing development in its place. This is a unique site in such that it's up quite an elevation above Mineral Point Road, but then has Ganser Way as an easy access point as well. So what you see in front of you is the existing layout of the Pizzeria Uno's. They had a large patio out in front, but then all the parking was accessible off the back, and there's a shared cross-access easement to the property to the west. Next slide. So our context here is basically, you can see the Uno's up at the top of the screen there, and then we're surrounded by a mixture of commercial buildings. KFC is directly to our east, and then a variety of commercial office buildings and retail with gas stations across the street. Next slide. So again, the back view, you can get a better sense as to how the parking lot slopes up to the existing Uno's building. And then again, the variety of character and style of architecture that we're sort of nesting our project into. Next slide. So with our proposed layout, we're looking at utilizing that same shared cross-access easement to provide surface parking for visitors and also for some residents off of either Mineral Point Road or access off of Ganser Way. And then the resident entry to the underground parking is basically almost at grade off of Ganser Way, so we can directly enter into the building and then create an entire deck of parking below. And one key feature of our development is taking the existing historic farmhouse, as it's been called, and relocating that on the property. We're basically picking it up and moving it towards Mineral Point Road and shifting it to the east slightly to utilize that as our community room for the building, and then doing a connection to that. And then we're also creating an outdoor play space as well. So there's a play area, what would be in the front yard, but again, up high above Mineral Point Road. So it'll be screened and separated. And then we're also doing pedestrian connections on both sides of the building down to Ganser Way. And we're also going to do our best to introduce a pedestrian connection down to Mineral Point Road off the north side of the site as well. Next slide. The overall floor plan layouts, you've got a larger deck of parking. So we're proposing building parking underneath the surface parking lot as well. And then the building itself is shown on the right-hand side there, where we've got the existing farmhouse shown as a community space. We're also locating the main exercise room and entry sequences at this level as well. Next slide. So then the upper stories, second, third, and fourth floor is a mixture of studios, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. Next slide. We've got elevation views drawn here. Again, it's a 4-story building being proposed. The palette of materials is intended to be complementary to the existing cream-colored brick building that we intend to preserve. And we also are intentionally introducing some sloped roof elements at the lower canopy areas, and then the upper 4th floor balconies as well, with a bit of a shed roof element, as the existing structure has shed roof porches on both sides of the building. Next slide. So again, additional views here. You can see the access to the underground parking, basically directly off of Ganser Way. Next slide. And then you get a glimpse of the existing farmhouse shown in the foreground here on that north elevation. Next slide. So for the perspective views, again, we're going to do our best to introduce a pedestrian connection down to Mineral Point Road. We have not worked through any sort of grading plans yet to confirm how we can achieve this, but we're representing that with that slope staircase there. But you can see the existing building brought more in the foreground, and actually, so it'll be more of a presence, be more visible than it currently is, being set back as much as it currently is. And then our building in the background to just serve as a complementary accent. Next slide. So again, additional perspective views. You get a better sense of the original homestead. Next slide. Another view here, again, where we're trying to create that front lawn area as best as we can, and we'll have a playground shown off to will be the left-hand side of the screen. Next slide. Another view where you can see the context, and then there's one more slide, I believe. So more of an area view, and then here's the one where you can actually see the connection, how we're tying into the backside of the original building. So that'll be our main entry opportunity as well from the parking lot area. So with that, I'd love to open it up for questions and comments.
Great, thank you very much. Who'd like to start? Oh, come on. Okay, Christian.
Okay, so I don't know how I feel about the keeping the old Pizzeria Uno building, but I like that building, and I'm glad you're doing it. So kudos to that. It does seem architecturally kind of a mismatch with what you're attaching to it, but anything you can do, especially color-wise or anything else to sort of tie it in, I think would be good. I'm a little curious more into the details of what would actually, go into a building like that. We sort of generically call these areas community rooms. I'm never sure exactly what that means in these type of developments, but anyway, I'm glad you're saving this building and going to the, I'm sure not inconsiderable expense of moving it a little bit. Yeah, thanks for that. The location in and of itself, almost completely surrounded by commercial. I think you gotta go a couple blocks away to get to any other residential things. Seems a little lonely. I'm not sure that, I would wanna live here, but I'm sure you've done your market research. I don't know if having the smell of the Colonel's 7 secret herbs and spices coming in my windows would be a good or a bad thing. Could be both, I guess. So anyway, that's all I got.
Thank you. Tom. Try it again.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. My question, looking at the unit mix, there are a fair number of 3 and 2 bedroom units in here, which reads to me as family friendly, which is great. But there is, as I see it, one small green play space high above Mineral Point Road and the KFC, and not a lot of other green space or family type space for that kind of family, what I assume to be family density. Can you just address that, Kevin, or are there other plans that I'm missing here?
No, thank you for bringing that up, Cliff. Yes, this is certainly going to be a family development. This project does intend to request WIDA tax credits at the end of this year to be in the cycle for next year's awards. So we do intend to create that outdoor playground space, play space, and then the community room itself, this existing building, has not been programmed out exactly, but there is opportunity in there for creating some indoor family gathering spaces as well. There's a second floor level, sort of a mezzanine level to the restaurant area that we can utilize. So we've got quite a bit of opportunity within that existing building to create some unique spaces for gatherings. But we'll do our best to maximize the amenities on the outside. And then this is certainly a walkable neighborhood such that we're trying to create those pedestrian connections such that you can walk down off onto Ganser Way and then migrate further into some neighborhoods as well. So that it will be forefront of our design going forward to create as many amenities as we can.
Okay. Russell?
I'll second the kudos on saving the farmhouse. I think that's a very ambitious and frankly exciting idea here. So I couldn't help but focus on that. One thing I noticed right away, and I'm sure this is just an early detail, but I'd be, with the smaller play area, I'd be afraid of people playing on the porch there with the slope off the farmhouse. It looks like a pretty drastic. You really pushed that farmhouse about as close to that slope as you could. So I'd wonder if there's something you would plan there for maybe, I don't know if decreasing the slope or build. I don't know if a wall is in the plans. But that's just a comment there. I like the idea that you've for your new building, you've tried to match the aesthetic of the existing. I wonder though, if I remember right, that building has shutters, fabric shades over the window. So it looks like you are planning to do some modifications to the existing building, I think. And I wonder if you should just go farther with that. And there was a comment earlier about they still don't seem to quite match. So I wonder if you'd do some other touches on the existing to try to bring the two building designs together a little more. So that's just an idea.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I guess I'm gonna just have to jump in and say I'm sorry, but I respectfully disagree with the sentiment of saving the old house. It's not historic; it's old. It's lost just about all of its integrity. I think a good portion of it is an addition, and moving it just loses more of its context. And I think of the opportunity you could do along Mineral Point Road, along that edge, with a more linear community room than trying to fight this old 2-story 19th century building that you're gonna just be throwing money into, versus something really clean and modern and useful that actually relates to the design of the building. The connection, the new building itself doesn't have anything to do with the old building in terms of its form or proportion or rhythm of openings. It's perched precariously on the edge of the hill. And so I guess my recommendation is to let it die the death it should have died, when they made Mineral Point Road a 4-lane highway. Lois.
I agree with you, Cliff. I think there's something very awkward about where you've placed that building, and I don't think it adds to the development. And I think it prevents you from doing something nice facing Mineral Point. I really don't like that play space where it is. It feels like the whole back of the building is turned its face against the play area, and I would think that the play area would want to be a little bit more enveloped or protected by the rest of the development, maybe surrounded. So if you flipped it over so it was, kind of in the a little bit more protected on the west side of the building. And at first I was thinking, well, maybe the play space in the existing building flipped. And I think that was in response to thinking that where that existing building was is kind of clumsy looking, and I think it does just detract from what you're trying to do with the new language of the building. With that said, I think there are some elements of the building that I'm not quite sure. I think I'm looking at the west angle elevation, and you have some nice rhythms there, but then all of a sudden it just kind of, there's a skewing, and it goes from the two paired balconies to the one, and then to the tall element, and then it just kind of starts to lose the rhythm at the end towards Mineral Point. So I would like to see a little bit more of a rhythm there, because it isn't huge where it needs that much breaking up. But also I think either relocate that house or maybe get rid of it entirely.
I think you have a lot more opportunity to do something with the playground and the community center if you weren't shackled from that old pile of bricks. Shane.
I'm gonna disagree. I like the old house, but I will agree that something about it right now is just not working. Placement, connection, and relationship to the new building just doesn't work. I totally agree with Lois that the playground is in an odd space, and I want to shuffle things around. Right now, they're just so different. I would wrestle, just like you probably are, with how to position them, whether or not to connect them, how you connect them. Even though it might not have historic status, you would almost have to. I would suggest you would treat it as a historic structure if you're going to keep it, and the connecting piece should almost be like completely different than both sides. It definitely shouldn't try to match the historic house structure, or whatever you want to call it. But its position on the edge of the slope feels really weird and crammed, and I don't know if it could be displaced or disconnected and occupy some of the space to the west where there's a little bit of parking lot now, which would probably reconfigure your site plan a bit. But point being, I like the historic structure, but it doesn't really fit within what you're proposing right now. And I think in terms of the new architecture, although it is a lot of beige, I think what I see in the renderings is pretty attractive, that there's a few different layers to that, and then some darker outlines of black or darker bronze trim and frames on the windows is pretty attractive, so I like that.
Thank you. I guess I would suggest you, since it's just paper, you would try an option without the farmhouse and see what kind of opportunities arise. Maybe you end up saving it. Maybe it is a good idea.
No, I agree. We certainly can take a look at that.
Now, I guess I have a question for Janine. This is a plan development request. Obviously, this is not in a residential zone. Initially, does staff have any opinion about the appropriateness of an apartment building in the middle of this part of Mineral Point Road?
I don't think there was anything in the report. Nothing initially from our planning team, but it's possible in the next coming weeks we'll be doing some more more in-depth study on this, and we can definitely provide that to the commission when they come back.
Okay. Jessica, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just wanted to put a comment about the pedestrian access from Mineral Point Road going up. You mentioned it, and I assume that that's still under some design to just give it more attention. I don't think it's working to your advantage right now. And I think safety-wise and just the way it would feel at night, right the way it is right now maybe could use more attention.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, if you're getting rid of the Pizzeria Uno's, maybe that opens up all different kinds of opportunities how you're going to, access from Mineral Point Road.
Agreed. Thank you.
I know that if this was, a straight zoning district, you would be required to have a pedestrian access off the street that it's addressed, and if you are going to have a Mineral Point Road address, I mean, is that the reason you're doing this stair? Is just because there's some obligation to have a stairway there for the mailman to climb or something? Because I can't see people. Well, I guess maybe to get to the bus, right? Is that what you're thinking? To public transit?
Correct. The public transit is focused on Mineral Point Road and then also further to the east. So we wanted to provide as easy access as we could.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, thank you very much. That's 2 down and 1 to go. We up to item number 13, which is going to be the last item on our agenda tonight, and it is 9703 Paragon Street, residential building complex. Oh, look, it's Kevin Burrow.
We have 4 people registered on this particular item. Kevin Burrow is registered in support and wishing to speak. And then Bob Feller is registered in support, available for questions. And Ryan McMurdy is registered in support and available to answer questions.
Great, thank you. Anytime you're ready, if maybe you want to get a drink of water or something, Kevin, take your time.
I'm all good. Thank you.
Okay.
So for this development, basically this is the continued development for Paragon Place at Bear Claw Way. Right now, building number 4 is currently under construction and buildings 1, 2, and 3 are occupied. The aerial view you have in front of you is from about a year ago. So this shows the construction of building 3, but that is now complete. And then the area between that construction site and Woolridge Street is now under construction with the foundation for building 4. So what we're doing is proposing a development further to the west, which would serve as a transition point. So these are the images of the existing buildings in context out there off of Woolridge and Bear Claw Way. So it's a high quality development that's been done. These are all 3-story buildings, high level of masonry on all of the buildings, and a variety of details and textures so that each of them have their own character. You have seen all of these come through in the past for approval. So what we're trying to do is take this palette and this quality level and then transition this into the next phase of the development in a smaller scale development such that we can transition from these 3-story buildings down further to the west. So this site plan shows the overall layout where the existing buildings are shown in the beige color off to the right. Our proposed buildings, we're proposing 5 structures total, 3 on the western half, 2 on the center of the site. These would be 2-story buildings with lofts. So in essence, a 2.5-story building. The northern one would be 35 units. And then it'll also have the indoor amenity area or the community space on the southern end of that. And then the southern building is 36 units, again, 2-story plus lofts. And they will have access to the outdoor amenity space as well. And then as you transition to the west, we are proposing 2-story townhome buildings. Each of those would have their own private garages as part of their space. These new buildings also do have access to underground parking off of Lakota Way for the southern building and then off of the shared parking lot for the northern building. And the outdoor amenity space will also be at a high level of detail, such we're creating outdoor seating space, gatherings, we got fire pits, grilling spaces, and then obviously the pool area as well, so that all of these residents would have access to this pool. There is another pool as part of the existing buildings, but they want to make sure that they've balanced the amenities on both sites such that residents have opportunities for either location. And we are trying to create a strong pedestrian connection through this entire development. So the sidewalk that comes off of the existing property to the east transitions across Chaska Drive and then ties into our amenity spaces as well. And then further transitions over to the sidewalks along Lakota Way for those two-story townhomes. Next slide, please. So for the exterior architecture of these, again, we're trying to maintain that high level of detail and character such that we've got a large amount of masonry. It's a little hard to see on the screen here, but all of the gable elements are 100% masonry. We're looking at introducing a cream-colored brick as an accent to tie into the existing buildings, and then a darker color brick as well as further complementary. And then just the inset areas are a composite siding element. Then you can also see the dormers that have been created on the roof to the lofted space such that you get that appearance of the 2 to 2.5 story buildings. Next slide. So this shows the character of the 2-story townhome buildings as well. Again, a high level of masonry on these buildings. We're looking to utilize the same color masonry for all of these buildings to be a consistent development given the scale of the buildings, such that we've got a similar quality level, color materials, and character. So these show what would be the townhome buildings. And then the last slide shows the additional, so there's 2 different styles of townhomes. One has the garages in front of the unit, and the other 2 buildings have the garages located behind the units. So what you're seeing are basically the front facades and then the 2 side views for the Western townhomes. So with that, I will open it up to comments and questions.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll start off with one then. Janine, if you could go back to the site plan, I have a question regarding the smaller units there. I see, where they have the garage entrances, the driveway is pretty long, and I was just wondering if those driveways to all 3 buildings, not the drive aisle, but the driveway, could be shorter, then you could almost see that those drive aisles getting closer to the buildings, on the north and south, and just creating more green space, between the buildings, whatever that is, building number 8. I mean, is that driveway needed for, parking an additional car? Because there's a garage under there, right?
Correct. There is a garage at each unit, but we did intentionally create them as 20-foot deep approaches, basically. So these will be occupied by families, or at least that is our desire, such that we would have the opportunity for a second vehicle to be able to be outside.
So each unit gets 1 car garage?
No, actually, they are 2-car garages. But then, again, for more family type use, oftentimes the garages get evolved into toy storage and things like that, such that we wanted to make sure we had the opportunity for that resident to be able to park the vehicle as well.
Well, it just seems like you could maybe do away with a little bit of asphalt by not having such a long approach if you already have a 2-car garage available to you. Lois.
I'm wondering if building number 7, if it's possible to orient that so it's facing the street. It seems a little odd that the front doors are facing an infiltration pond when you have this a street view, or and then you can have a backyard rather than your backyard is facing another parking lot in the side of a building.
Right. This site does have a fair amount of topography to it, such that the southwestern corner is the lowest portion of the site, and there is a bit of grade change as you go from the north side, Paragon Street, down to Wilridge Street. So we're trying to utilize the terrain such that now that building number 7 would have the opportunity to have potential basement type space exposed towards that infiltration pond area. But it would be tight to turn the building and get it to fit and have the circulation through with the 2 driveways.
So what you're saying is right now the front of the building has a basement also. It's a walkout basement in the front as well.
We haven't worked out the final grades on it, but yeah, we do have that opportunity for more of a split level type entrance sequence.
Mm-hmm. I still feel it's a little strange. It feels like you could have a full backyard for these rather than having everything facing a parking lot. But
sure.
Yeah. So is it possible to reconfigure the infiltration wet pond a little bit? Or I mean, they seem kind of tiny, and in the middle of that space, is it possible to pull that down and make a little bit more use out of the building area and maybe make those a little, fill out the space, fill out the corner for those two pieces?
Right, I hear what you're saying. We are working with the civil engineer in that right now. This is the what they thought was the minimum space we had to dedicate to them. So you see that what appears to be a property line drawn in there to segregate off the amount of land that they need. They haven't designed or engineered the depth of the ponds yet. So we could work with them to try and maximize the amount of green space available to us.
Okay, thank you.
Are you pushed up to your setback at Paragon Street, in terms of moving all the buildings a little bit to the north, or are you at your setback there?
No, we do have the opportunity to move that forward. Although, actually, I should double check that. Paragon Street is the front yard for this side of the development, and then Lakota Way is a side yard, and then the pond area is the rear yard. So I would need to double check, but based on the alignment of the existing buildings, I think we are up to the setback line on the northern end.
Okay, thank you. Shane, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I had two comments, and I agree with Lois and Cliff, both of your comments before this. Feels like for that west side of the development, there's a lot of pavement given how many units are actually over there. But looking at the infiltration and wet pond area, a common comment that I make is using those as amenities, and whether there's a connecting trail or something that loops around them, and that they start to have a little bit maybe more organic of a shape if you squint at it, as opposed to just sort of a engineered rectangle. And then my other comment was about the parking lot island in between building 5 and 6. And I like that there's the connector to the properties and the development to the east, but the sidewalk kind of cutting through the parking lot in the middle of that island doesn't really seem to be going anywhere. So I don't know that that's really like the best connection to the townhomes to the west. And tying those two comments together, I guess, and like we mentioned earlier this evening, potentially intercepting some of that stormwater upstream and not just kind of designating the corner low point as the recipient of all the water and piping it there. I think if you could slow it down and create maybe a swale in that parking lot landscape island to infiltrate and slow it down, that would be great.
Okay. So we'll take a look at that. Thanks, Shane.
Okay. Anyone else? I don't know if you were listening to one of our previous projects, but we were talking about a swimming pool and a play area between two buildings there. And when you do develop this, it'll be really important to see how that from the street Chaska Drive is developed. We just don't want to see a chain link fence around the pool and just concrete pavement. It'd be nice if there was a masonry wall that kind of tied the two together so that there's not so much fencing as it is a real three-dimensional landscape feature from both sides that really tie it together and give it some sense of space.
Yeah, we'd be fully in agreement with that sentiment. This will be, again, a high level of detail on all amenities, especially the outdoor amenity area as well.
Mm-hmm. And then that could also work as a really nice entry feature, make a prominent point of entry from Chaska for the pedestrians. Okay, anyone else? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So thank you very much for your time and for the last 3 projects.
Thank you. I appreciate your input very much.
Mm-hmm. All right, that was item 13, and that was our last agenda item other than business by members.
Just a quick note on the schedule for the remainder of 2020. We are going to continue as a type 1 meeting. I see that Alder Abbas has his hand raised. So before I go any further.
Maybe can we unmute everybody, Stefan?
Yep, so I just enabled you all to
even the family pet.
Janine, you can go ahead and I can go after you.
Oh, well, first, I'd like to thank you for your time in our meeting tonight after your late Common Council meeting last night. So thank you for being here. The schedule real quickly, for the remainder of 2020, we're going to stay as type 1, just as we kind of get our feet flatter on the ground, getting ready for a possible type 2 meeting for 2021. So right now, the remainder meetings are October 7th, November 4th, and December 2nd. And we'll have the 2021 schedule out within the next month. That's it.
I might be drunk on November 4th.
Okay, so
one way or the other, I'm probably going to be drunk.
So how can we tell?
Is that your birthday?
I'll forget to unmute myself.
Thanks, Janine. That sounds good. So I appreciate that. Yeah, last night meeting went up till 3:30, 4 a.m. And my little one was up, earlier. My wife, she's kind. She let me sleep, but my 3-year-old threw a tantrum at 7 a.m. And she's like, no, I want to see my dad. And then a lot of crying, so I have to. So I'm going to sleep after this meeting immediately. But anyhow, thanks all. Yeah, I just, we have really smart people on this commission who really knows design and also landscaping design. Shane, you and Kristen and others really know what they're doing on a commission. One thing we initially discussed at the commission level is about, this stormwater ordinance is passed, looking into 200 years of rain. And some of the project is coming in front of us with like last project, 7 acre, 1.6 acre, have over 100,000 square feet of stormwater. So what I was thinking, because we look at the design of the building and we should also look into how that stormwater will reflect the design and the architectural design and in the future, because that will stay stormwater there for decades. And either we need to look for landscaping, either rain gardens, a surrounding area, and how that elevation look like, what we want around it, and how it could be pleasing to human eye. So these are moving forward, some of the challenges we're going to see more often. And I will really need expertise of this commission to really see how we can come across some sort of framework. So when they submit their applications, the staff can tell them the design is fine. Could you please also provide some? So we can also give some guideline to developer at the same time to save their time and effort. So I just want to bring in front of everyone and see if somebody have any thoughts around it, and just to see.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and kind of familiar with, although I'm not a civil engineer, I'm familiar with the ordinance modifications recently. I was also looking at it as one example and a model in writing some of the sustainability guidelines for DFDM with state projects, which is a new set of guidelines that they've just released recently, I think within this last month. But I know in discussing that ordinance with other civil engineers in my office that it can be a very high bar to attain and will definitely have a design impact. But I'm really hopeful, and I think the bright side of it is a lot of these things, although they will definitely come at a cost to the development and the developers. We've seen from recent years that this is not just like token gesture sustainability. This is resilience and really the path forward that we need to be promoting. Also, a lot of the things in terms of design that can be implemented are not necessarily expensive. I mean, they're definitely more expensive than many developers or contractors are used to or wanting to pay for, but bioretentions, rock cribs, permeable pavements, it's not rocket science, and it's not that expensive of materials. So I'm really hopeful, and like a lot of the comments that were brought up tonight is, I think treating some of that water more upstream, and pushing back when we can to not allow it just be in this rectangular pool at the low end of the site, especially when it's like steep and fenced off, no amenity to the development or anyone really for that matter, other than it retains the water. It could definitely be serving multiple purposes. So thank you for the work that you're doing and promoting those things.
Thanks. And I also want to bring a quick update. So electric vehicle charging ordinance, finally, it's introduced yesterday. And it will go to Madison Sustainability Commission end of September, and then Plan Commission, and then Common Council. And if it gets adopted, then I don't need to call out developers for EV charging station. They have to do by the ordinance. So it took almost a year to create that collaboration and bringing all the stakeholders and also sustainability organization all on the same page. They're still not on the same page, but we are close, very close to each other. So I just want to update that too as well while we have an opportunity. And Russell, welcome. Great to see you via Zoom. I usually say great to see you in person, but there's no in person. So nice to see you on a web.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I look forward to meeting you all in person sometime, but yeah, who knows when that's going to be.
Stefan met me in person and he was a little surprised with my height.
I was. You're like 6'6". I'm used to looking. It looks like you're a little shorter from this angle.
We had a conference, and mayor conference. I was there, and after then, me and Stefan look at me. He's like, "Dude, you're tall." So this is Zoom world we are living in. So when we see each other after a while, we are like, huh.
Yeah, it's too bad because the new guy is supposed to bake cookies.
I did. They're here. Sorry.
All right.
Probably not going to be good by the time I can get them to you.
Russell, is that the form void of the School of Music project behind you?
Yeah, it is. This was the only background I had. It's of our office, but that is the School of Music concrete form. Yeah,
I remember seeing those when they were building it, and they're so artistic in themselves. It's cool that you saved one.
Yeah. Probably, maybe Cliff would say it should have died the death it should have died or whatever. But
well, I think that's state property.
Yeah, There was lawyers involved. I'm not sure how many, but.
And Janine, so some of the high profile project, when they go from UDC to Plan Commission, usually at Common Council, I know what's happening to them. So I think so if those projects get failed for some reason, it might be nice end of the meeting, we can get quite a bit of quick update what happened with those projects which we approved. So I think so Hub 2 is coming back. If I'm not wrong, I saw on a Common Council agenda they did a petition. I have to check again. But just FYI, it will be nice for us to know of the decision we made about design, what happened to those projects if they get canceled and what was the reason behind it. So.
Yeah, there was a project on East Washington also that we approved that. I don't think it made it through Plan Commission though.
I thought it went to Plan Commission and Plan Commission turned it down.
Yeah,
right?
it did. Yeah, it didn't pass through the Plan Commission, right?
I can see what we can put together for the next meeting. Thank you for that suggestion.
Thanks.
Just to continue the discussion on stormwater, I appreciated hearing a lot of the ideas about how we're integrating the aesthetic component of that. I mean, I think a lot of people think a rain garden is a pretty pleasing thing. I'm curious if this group is really taking the charge from some of the Dane County green infrastructure proposals or suggestions. I don't remember what they call them, plans. I kept seeing the Nothi Bruce site plan with the blue roof, and I was thinking, are they proposing a blue roof? I kept thinking that, and clearly they weren't. But that's another possible idea. It doesn't really have an aesthetic component, or necessarily, but
we did see the blue roof proposed at Judge Doyle Square, I think. Last week. Yeah.
So that I'll be taking cues from all of you how to work in some of those ideas that don't maybe have that aesthetic component.
Yeah, those, that Dane County report is interesting and how we can accommodate that through design process. That's actually, it's good for all of us to, sometime get some sort of summary, and might be I can ask, I want to be thoughtful about everybody's time, but I might sometime I can ask a sustainability coordinator to give us a small brief presentation of 5 minutes or 10 minutes to just go through the summary of it. But at the same time, a year ago, and I got so much in my plate, never got a chance to really work on UDC ordinance. And Janine, we had a meeting to discuss about UDC ordinance, and also we had a discussion about how we can accommodate sustainability discussion into that. So then we have purview. If we really want to discuss about sustainability and make recommendation, then developers cannot say, hey, you're just here to talk about building design and you cannot go inside the building, or some sort of sustainability around it. So that is something again on my radar, and hopefully once things get a little settled, whenever I think things are settled, things go back to really bad situations. So I'm hoping once things get a little settled, the council and timing might be after budget in December/January. Those months are a little slower, so that time I think so I can work with city attorney and with Janine and with them and see, and also bring some idea proposal in front of UDC. No promises, but this is the idea which I think so we should bring forward and review this ordinance.
Right, that's the way it would get done. Is it would need to be through the ordinance, and making sure that it's not at odds with other ordinances that are on the books, with the energy code and other things, and whether it's a mandate or an incentive for adding stories or whatever it might be.
Alder Abbas, that does align with the timeline that I kind of mentioned briefly. We know that you were in a previous meeting and couldn't be here for the first part, but I gave a quick report on the staff report that does outline some of the things we'll work on for MGO 33.24 updates.
Wonderful.
Okay.
I do have a question on that. It sounded to me like, Janine, you're opening it up to the commission to give you comments, feedback, input. Is that done? Does that need to be done in a public forum? You're not looking for people to provide input to you in a non-public forum.
It's a good question, Russell. But the first thought would be yes, in a public forum, because it is part of a public process. And that we will have workshops with the committee that, they still have to be technically in the public forum, but they're more for the commission to work on a project than to hear public comment. Although I think we still have to make it open for public comment. But I'll confirm that process and provide more detail.
Okay, thank you.
But I think there's a number of issues that we would be looking at. The districts, the ordinance, the policy and procedures manual. I don't think we'll cover it all in one meeting. I think there's a number of things to do to really revisit the commission as a whole, its purview and its districts, and and also things like Tom mentioned, the design guidelines as well.
And one quick question, Janine. Urban design facade grant, city had that grant starting from 2004, I think. So we created that pool of money. Do you know which urban design district get those grant, or it is citywide?
That's a great question. There is a target area, and I know that Tom Otto is now in charge of the facade grant program, but Craig Wilson retired. I can get those boundaries. I usually kind of look to them as a guidance of whether it's within those boundaries. I don't know that they necessarily align with urban design districts. I think they're very specific to kind of areas where there could be improvement in the facade on a streetscape. And then sometimes people can get a variance. If they're outside those target areas, they can get a variance if the facade grant team is supportive of it. And I think there's other committees, finance committee, that also reviews it. So I can give you a report, a little more background on that if the commission would appreciate it.
That would be good.
Okay.
Thanks. And I do miss cookies.
Oh, it's time for Halloween's coming up, with the orange and black sprinkles. Really good. The kids don't like them. Okay, anything else, anybody?
Before we sign off, thank you so much to Stefan and his team. We are grateful for your support and the magic you do behind the curtain. And then also Julie Cleveland for all the magic that she does to help keep us organized. And of course, to all the commissioners for your dedication and patience with us as we work to adapt.
Yeah, you're like honorary members now. You're with us, every time we meet.
Yep. And as I mentioned, Stefan and IT people, they are expert on public policy, council meetings, UDC, you name it. He knows everything.
Yeah. So were you up till 3:30 this morning also?
I was not, but the guy doing our live streaming right now was. So
he was smiling. He's like, I am not, the other guy.
I lucked out, but Joe was not so lucky. So.
Oh, well, wait till the comes time to argue about the budget.
Exactly.
Yep.
Look at this. It's not even 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Ooh.
This is awesome. All right,
Still
guys.
got time for cocktails.
Yep.
All right, everybody.
Still live. All right. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you very
Good
much.
night.
Bye. Bye.